Pete Fox never saw motocross as just a sport. To him, it was a canvas with endless possibilities to push the culture forward. From day one, he set out to make the coolest gear in the game. But he didn't just design gear, he reshaped a generation. For a long time, when you thought of moto, you thought of Fox. They had the baddest riders and the most iconic kits. This is the story behind the brand and the man whose vision defined it. With bold designs and a competitive drive to match, Pete helped take his family's company from a $5 million brand to a $100 million a year revenue machine, bringing style, money, and a whole new level of cool to motocross. After the sale of Fox, Pete found himself running Kanye West brand Yeezy for a full year back in 2016, taking his eye for culture and creativity into the worlds of music and fashion. But Pete was missing his purpose, and eventually he returned to his roots. That purpose became RENEN, a fully customizable, made-in-America gear company that puts artistry, individuality, and soul back into moto. Gypsy Gang, welcome Pete Fox to the podcast. In 2022, Eli Tomac made the switch to Yamaha and found instant success on their class-leading YZ450F. Eli Tomac had 3 reasons for making the switch. He wanted power, and the Yamaha has the strongest and most tunable motor in the class. He wanted KYB suspension, and the YZ450F comes stock with his preferred KYB system. And finally, he wanted a cable clutch. Yamaha took the championship-winning YZ450F and made it even better. More powerful, lighter, slimmer, with enhanced overall stability and more agility than ever before. The 2025 YZ450F is available now in both Yamaha Blue, or to really look like Eli Tomac, it's also available in the Monster Energy Edition. The pinnacle of off-road 4-stroke performance wrapped in iconic Yamaha racing livery. Head to YamahaMotorsports.com or into your local dealer now.
I met a gypsy.
Want to watch any Terrafirmas? Just whatever.
Everyone wants to talk about Terrafirma all the time.
Oh, I mean, that was probably one of the most iconic. I don't know. I feel like it changed a lot. Those movies, you know.
Yeah.
How involved were you in the Terrafirmas?
So are we started?
We're rolling. Pete Fox,
Okay.
Everybody. So we're just getting straight into it.
Okay, cool. The original Terrafirma, I think I filmed half of it or 3/4 of it.
You personally?
Me personally. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah. And then my younger brother edited, John, he edited T1, T2, I think. I don't know how far. He was editing for a while. So the original Terrafirma was super loose, and I can't remember exactly when we decided to make a video. So I was doing at that time I was designing product and I was taking photos for catalogs and ads. And because I was doing that, I just started bringing a video camera. I think John or Greg, one of my brothers, was really into surf videos and wanted us to do stuff. So I started bringing a video camera. And I remember, the one I remember the most is the Doug Henry.
Yeah.
You remember the whole skit with Elvis and all that?
Yeah.
So I went out there to shoot pictures really for the catalog and an ad. And I brought the camera, and I think I'd written the script, like a little script for the Elvis thing. And it was just, again, it was super loose. And that's my memory, at least. And shot some pictures and shot some video and just had fun. It's so much fun. And then brought it back, gave it to John, and I think he edited it into, put it all together into Terrafirma 1. I was super busy with the design, super focused on designing and creating the ads and stuff. And so for me, the video was, down on the list of priorities for me. And
Yeah.
I liked it, and it was super fun. But I was really busy. So, and it wasn't necessarily my priority. I was responsible for.
You had responsibilities on your shoulders, right?
Exactly. Right. Designing and getting good photos for ads and stuff. I don't know if you remember the same time, the shot that I remember taking during that trip was Doug sitting on it's an antique chair out in like a forest. he's wearing forest green, I think, and there's like fall colors. There's a lot of moto guys will remember probably. He's kind of out in this random setting of it's fall leaves on the trees, and there's his bike is like leaning up against a tree in the background.
I don't know that I remember it. Can you look that up? So just go Google and just type in Doug Henry. Would it be like a Fox poster, do you think? Or like Fox?
It was definitely an ad.
Or Fox ad.
Yeah, Fox.
Doug Henry. H-E-N.
Yeah, print. It's like a print ad.
Yep, and then go Fox Racing ad.
Now I see why you have the TV.
Yeah. Cool. See, there we go. So just go to images.
Yeah.
Might be able to find it. There it is. Like that one right there. That's the one we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep, click into that. Close that, whatever that is. Yeah, okay.
So that's that. What's cool about this ad for me is that this was
long-term memory.
Yeah,
kicking in.
Is that I had no, except I thought he was wearing green. He's not. I went out there without this. I didn't have this idea. I just was going out there to shoot pictures. And I remember flying in again, long-term memory. Flew into New Jersey, I think. I forgot where Doug lived at the time. I think he still lives there. But flew in at night and drove to Doug's house, and we stayed in his house. And you know, I'm from California. I didn't know about the fall leaves like this. Woke up the next morning and I walked outside and I saw the fall leaves. I'm, oh shit, this is awesome. And so let's figure out a photo. So that's how loose we were back then. It was.
I can imagine. I mean, and like I said, 10 years ago, I was shooting a bunch of really professional, formal, big budget reds and it was just a whole thing back then, you know, like Dungeon. You remember the shoot where Dunge and Kenny chop it into Glamis?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on that.
Yeah.
So it's like, that is the level of Fox that I remember. But I mean,
budgets and
it didn't start like that.
No.
You know, it had to have been just so, you guys were just breaking new ground almost with every single thing that you did.
Yeah, just what sounds fun, what's cool, let's do cool stuff today, right? And it wasn't until kind of after, I don't know what year this was, but it was a couple years after this that it got, you know, the business kind of
got serious.
Got more serious, yeah. Which
yeah, it's
not as fun,
unavoidable.
Yeah,
in a strange way.
Yeah,
you know, like you just scale, and I think it just comes down to like responsibility. You know, like I even feel it with this. There's just so much responsibility. Like the more people that work for you, and the bigger the thing gets, and the more money that everything gets attached to, it costs more money to run, which means you got to make more money, and like it just responsibility starts to snowball, and that can kind of suck the joy out of it in a way.
Yeah, definitely. It's the responsibility to the other people, and you know, financially what that means to other people, but you know, that's why for me this time period
that's the best,
because it was literally like, let's just do cool stuff every day. Like, oh, this is fun. Let's try this. You know, just try stuff.
Yeah.
And
no
everything.
Budget.
There's no budget on that.
No, dude, that's a lawn chair and a block in the background.
I think I had a camera and like, oh, I'm here for a couple of days. Let's just do, what are we going to come up with?
And that would have been on film, yeah?
That was on, I'd shoot slides. Everything was on slides. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm coming into this very green as to like really knowing your role. Like I've known the name Pete Fox forever, like as long as I've known Fox.
Okay.
So I'm very interested. Like I'm probably going to be very naive to a lot of the things that you did, you know. So I'm just forewarning that I don't have a detailed history of like exactly what you did within the company, and like, you know, even just to see this and to be like, oh, and that was on film, and that's random, and you know, for Terrafirma to be almost an afterthought, like I just get the sense that so much of what you guys were doing was just breaking completely new ground and like laying the foundation for this kind of behemoth of an industry that we've got now, you know?
Yeah. I'd love to tell a little bit more. My brain is waking up to this. So I came up with the idea for doing this picture from the fall leaves. And then we were like, oh, we need what are you going to sit on? Let's have you seated, because usually everyone's standing, you know? It's pretty standard to be standing. And I thought, oh, let's do you sitting. I don't know why. I thought it'd be, fresh and different. And I don't know how we ended up at a antique store. I'm like, we got to find a chair that looks right for this. So we ended up at this antique store. That's where we found that. I think they were asking like $600 or $800.
No way.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, that's too much money. I can't to buy for one photo. My memory is that we bought it, and then I think maybe we tried to take it back and sell it to them for half price or something.
Yeah.
But that's how loose it was. Like, oh, let's have you sitting. Oh, let's do this chair. Like, right? It's
just very
it's way more
organic.
creative. And way more creative that way.
Yeah, and not contrived in any way.
Yeah. That's the way I tried to come in with a little bit of a plan, but allow allow creativity to thrive, you know?
And so you're making all of these like offshoot kind of Terrafirma being like this side quest. Do you remember when it was done and it was released? What was there ever like an aha moment where you were just like, oh, this just changed everything?
Yeah, I remember being super excited. And this would be a good interview with my brother John or Greg. But what I remember is that the original Krusty was coming out, or I don't remember the timing, but I remember while this got closer and closer to being done, the awareness that Krusty was either about to come out or had come out, and there was a little bit of an arms race. Who's going to come out first? Who's this going to be better? Mm-hmm. And then I do remember the Krusty being so, Krusty is like,
it was its own
wide
thing.
Open, right? It's wide open. The music, the crashing, the
parties, the lifestyle.
So in your face, which made it amazing. But it definitely wasn't. That's not me. That's not my style. I could never have made any part of Krusty. So there's a big part of Terrafirma that's more of my flavor, or maybe my family's flavor, my brother's, but definitely mine.
Yeah, and it was more race.
Yeah.
It was more of the lifestyle of being a motocross rider. Like, as cool as Krusty was and as wild as Krusty's was, it never spoke to my lifestyle or my ambitions of where I wanted to be. Like, when I watched Terrafirma as a kid, I could kind of like look into my future, in a way, like I looked at that and said, it's what I want to be. And I ended up being a filmmaker, and I ended up, I guess in a roundabout way, like kind of going in that direction. And I think that that's what was it was more relatable. It was the top of the top. It was the best guys in the world, but it was very relatable. Like, it showcased these guys that we all idolized and looked up to in, like, essentially like living our dream life, I
agree. And I think what made both of them so strong is that they were different flavors, but kind of doing the same thing, both in moto, dirt bikes, and completely different flavors. So it wasn't like two race videos coming out at the same time and trying to compete. Yeah. And so I think it made the whole pie bigger and stronger and more exciting. And
it told like a complete story of the culture.
Yeah.
Because that was a part of the culture, for sure.
Yeah.
But this was also a part of the culture. And I think crazy to think that those two things kind of over the years like weave together, and it almost did like broaden the whole pie, as you say,
Also, it's crazy that they were born essentially at the same time.
But separate.
Yeah.
Very separate.
Then they came together after Terrafirma and Krusty came out. Then I know my brother was talking to John and Dana at Krusty, and that's when we started to come together a little bit. But initially, it was like, oh, I heard that there's some guys. Who are these guys? They're making a video. And then I remember when it came out, and half the people, even at Fox, were like, oh, that video is way better than ours.
Yeah, really.
Right?
That was like the internal competition.
Yeah. My whole life was like that. With my older brother saying, "Oh, we're not as good as other people."
Yeah, right. So to go way back to the genesis of Fox Racing, like how is it born and how do you guys get involved and who does what? Like how does that work? I could imagine that working with family is quite difficult at the scale that you guys ended up working together.
Yeah, at scale it was difficult. In the early days, it's easier and better and more fun. So the company started. My dad was a physicist.
What?
You don't know this part?
No.
So my dad was a physicist, physics professor in Santa Clara University in NorCal, and on weekends his hobby was riding dirt bikes. As weird as that is.
Amazing.
His story is that he was a physics student in Wisconsin, which is where I was born and my brother were born. And all he could afford to get to school was a Honda. I forgot what the bike is, but it's like kind of if you look at them, they're not really motocross bikes. I don't think motocross bike existed back then. And he would ride it to school. And one day he saw the same bike in the parking lot and it was covered in mud. This is the story he's always told us. And he's like, "Oh man, what's that guy doing with his bike all muddy? That looks like probably fun." And he ended up talking to that guy and finding out about hair scrambles and things that whole life. So my dad started doing it and loved it. Then he became a physics professor at Santa Clara University, and he was hardcore motocross guy on weekends. And then one day he decided, there's a lot more to the story, but one day he decided, I'm going to quit teaching and start a motocross company.
That's insane.
And what's insane is when he did this, he had 4 kids. There were 4 of us. And we're not from a wealthy family or anything like that. And to think that...
So it just took him over.
Yeah, took him over. But the fact that part of it is that, how modest and safe my dad and my parents are both very modest. They don't spend, even to this day, it's very low frills, and I still live in the same house. My parents paid $35,000 for their house. They still live there. And the fact that that's what blows me away now is, wow, he had 4 kids and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to switch careers and do something on my own."
And to be a teacher, you're a very safe guy.
Yeah.
Like the process of becoming a teacher, you essentially go to school and then you go to school and then you go to school.
Yeah.
That's probably by definition about as safe of a journey that you can take in life.
Yeah.
So then the entrepreneur's journey is the complete opposite. So to have the ability to use, it's like almost 2 different brains to pull that off.
Yeah, almost. It is. I can't wrap my head around it. We do have this like entrepreneurial family DNA. Like my grandfather owned a farm, and my great grandfather owned like a beer company in Chicago, and so there was some of that. Maybe that's where my dad got like the confidence or the inspiration. But yeah, it's a kind of a bizarre story.
What was it like growing up with the physicist's father?
Because I'm not, so that's not me at all. My mom's...
You're very creative.
Yeah, I'm the other side of the brain, and my mom, that's more like my mom. My older brother is more like my dad.
Okay.
Greg is more like my dad. And my memories of childhood it's awesome. Amazing memories. Sitting at a dining room table, like the size of this, with the whole family. We'd always have these organized, family dinners. And my dad would sit at the end of the table, and the memory I have is that I could ask him crazy questions about outer space or zero gravity or what happens in a vacuum, like these things that I could, you had the resource, and he would like try to explain it to us. Being a physics professor, he could kind of do that. And about halfway through him talking, I would like usually zone out. I'm like, well, my brain's never going to be able to like understand this. And then my brother and he would, my older brother and he would interact Greg is older, more wired like my dad, and so I would kind of sit there. This is my whole childhood was more. I was an observer,
Yeah.
and so I'd watch them talk, and sometimes I would listen, and sometimes my brain I would like drift, and I credit like my brain would go into like imagination mode to keep myself occupied because I couldn't leave the table or I couldn't leave the car or wherever we were. So sometimes my brain would drift and I would just start like, I don't know. I
feel what you're saying.
I feel like it's like a form of meditation.
Yeah.
Where you just like let your brain like wander sometimes or draw, paint in your.
How visual is your brain? Like in the landscape?
Very visual. And that's the other part of me is I know I have a really good visual memory. Other than that being like the wrong color.
Yeah. But you can see that.
I can remember faces. I can remember like visual stuff. So it's interesting, I think, when you get older to like try to really understand like how your brain, everybody's brain works different, and to understand it and the strengths and weaknesses of your brain it's interesting.
I found out September last year that I have a thing called aphantasia. So I have zero visual, like in a landscape, like zero mind's eye, completely nothing.
What does that mean?
Like, so how you can visually see things, like if you when I close my eyes, black, only black. And I thought that it was so I do a lot of meditation, and there's like this one specific line. It's like kind of the thing that like got me on the trail of this, but it's basically like if I say picture a pink elephant in your mind's eye, you can't not picture a pink elephant.
Yeah. And
I'm sitting there being like, I can't picture a pink elephant. Like I can think of what a pink elephant would look like, but there's nothing there. And it sort of like started this whole little trail again. As you get older, you try and like deconstruct your mind. But yeah, so now I just have like a totally, like before that, I would have heard you talk about that and I would have thought, oh, you can imagine how something would look. Yeah. But I'm like, oh no, people can actually see shit in their mind. And that gives me a new context to like creative people. But because I just literally don't have that. It's wild.
So the way my brain works is if I get an idea for something, and I consider myself a graphic designer because it's very, very, very visual, but it's also very static. And so if I get an idea, I'll stop whatever I'm doing, and in my imagination, I will design something. I will actually like, okay, if this goes here and that goes here, and like, okay.
So for someone that can't do that, really try to break that down, what that looks like in your brain.
It's like I'm drawing without the paper, right? It'll be like, okay, if that line goes there and like, okay, and but it's like, but it's not, it's loose, right? It's like, it's not super structured where, okay, there will be 3 lines and it's not mathematical. It's just a visual kind of, okay, on the back, like, especially because I've been doing this so long, I can I'll design a jersey almost like, in my head. And it's been one of the kind of challenges throughout my life is when I was younger and I couldn't control it as much, I would be with people and I'd see something and then immediately I'd look at that can and I would like, oh man, that gives me an idea for something, a design, and I'll stop and I won't be listening to people. And, it made it, where I wanted to have quiet time a lot. I want to have quiet. Like my brain needs that.
Yeah. I mean, it makes total sense. And it probably looks from the outside, because obviously people can't see that, right? Probably looks from the outside that you would be shutting down, closing people off.
Aloof.
Yeah, aloof.
Got that a lot.
Yeah. And I feel like nowadays I'm more and more understanding that concept. And I think with the way that my brain works, it's very conversational. So you talk about the Eli Tomac podcast, right? I could almost do that podcast in my head and hear what is being said. So I don't have the visuals, but the language component, and I could have very detailed conversations, and so
before
it's like
it happened or after it
wait
happened?
before. Yeah.
So you were imagining your discussion with
just a full
conversation with Eli before you had it.
Yeah. And then so I don't need notes for this. I don't write questions. Like I just feel like I've kind of already had the conversation, and then I need to go in and pull it out in real life, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
But I can relate to the quiet, because if I'm in a room full of people talking and I'm having there's another conversation going on in here, that all just becomes noise that I've got to tune out. So I want to go into my office, I want to shut the door, and I just want to sit down and I'm having the conversation, you know?
I know for me, if I don't have, like throughout the day, if there's multiple days where I don't have that quiet time to myself, that I get super stressed and I get like irritable.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so to
but I didn't realize that when I was younger. So there's so many things that I wish, as you get older and more experience and more life experience, realize, man, if I knew this back then,
if I knew myself better,
I would have taken the time. Like, okay, I'm going to go take this time. But instead, it's like, just want to do it all. And you're not really even aware, like, I'm coming off as a dick. I should just go have some time to myself, and I'll come back, and then now I'll be present.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And you kind of could have communicated boundaries better and communicated what you were feeling and said like, hey, I need to go do this. I'll be back in a little. And people would be able to come at it with more understanding. Yeah. And I suppose as you get down the road and the company gets bigger and the stakes get higher and there's more and more people, and I'm assuming like new people that are coming in and going, and it's like that's a very shifting and changing environment to like not have those skills and that awareness.
Yeah. So if you want to go back to, I think we left off with about my dad starting the company. And then, so he started in 1974. I was 6 years old. Greg was like 8. And the early days, it's just a kind of, it was an extension of like a family experience, because we would be at home or we'd be at school or we'd be at the office, tinkering around. Greg and I would do odd jobs. My dad would like keep us busy by like doing something. There was one thing, he would pay us a penny for taking apart like grips and stuff. And so we'd come in there and do odd jobs, but it just all felt like, my memory of that is that the feeling was, this is all my life and this is all the family. Yeah. There was no like hard line separating the two. And the people that worked at the company at the time were like an extension of the family. And my parents would, for the company Christmas parties, they'd have everyone come over to the house, small little thing. There was like a dozen people or something. And so it was I'm so grateful for that. And it's such an important part of the experience, the history of Fox, is that it started like that. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to make this, my dad wasn't some executive who said, oh, I've got an idea to how to make $100 million company and I'm going to go do that. It was like, I love motocross and it was all organic,
And making the thing that he wished he had, I'm sure.
Yeah. So in the early days, he was such a hardcore fan, such an enthusiast of the sport, and it was just starting out. And so he said his strength was that he would, be at the track or whatever, and he'd see, oh, that guy has some really cool gloves, or that guy's got a cool shock or whatever. And he was such a nerd about it that he'd come up with, oh, I'm going to figure out where you buy those gloves and I'll sell it to other people. And so he was like, it was like a business hobby almost, He was just finding cool stuff and then and selling it. Yeah. And the other story I love is, it's just so long ago that to get a mailing list of dealers in the country, him and my mom went to the local library, and would go through the yellow pages of, look up motorcycle dealers for each like state or whatever, and they would look up, oh, here's a motorcycle dealer, and they would write it down, and then they'd start sending. We made catalogs,
little Rolodex cards with all the dealers.
Fuck, I don't know where they stored it all, but yeah, it was all manual. And then we made these catalogs. We made them in the garage. My dad would bring home boxes of Xerox pages, put them around the garage, starting at 1 and ending at 100 or however many pages it was. And I'm 6 or 7 years old, and we'd go pay, each box, take page number 1, number 2, all the way around the room, and then staple it, and then start over. And that's like the early days of Fox. And again, it's, what's so cool about it for me was that it was just, this is what we're doing as a family. It wasn't even a business. It was just, wash the dishes and then go build a catalog, It was just, this is the stuff we're doing.
And I think that there's a lot of, especially back then, I think it's so much harder these days to make a business like that. There's just so much more to navigate, and especially to get to the kind of scale that Fox got to and is at now. But I mean, you kind of just you're just living through your passion, and I think that that's one of the things, is motocross especially, but there's so many sports or, hobbies that are like, I'm sure people in bow hunting and like the great big bow, I don't know anything about it, but like Hoyt's Bows or whatever was probably the same, and like skiing companies. And, there's so many of these companies where these people just, that was their life and they didn't want to work. They wanted to go snowboarding and make things better for themselves. And it just becomes this organic progression, and you end up living your life through your passion. You don't necessarily have this like, okay, I work for these hours and then on X days on the weekend I go and do my passion. Then my life, like, you don't have the separation in life. You just kind of have this one big evolving like lifestyle through your passion.
Yeah. And that definitely, from what I know, the other motocross brands at that time, a lot of their stories are similar, and the surf companies, Quicksilver and those guys, it's similar. It's just like people that loved some sport, and then they saw an opportunity and just started it without the idea that it was ever going to be some massive business.
Yeah, you just end up wanting to, first Quicksilver. I just want to surf Bells Beach every day.
Yeah.
Torquay becomes the spot where, Rip Curl and Quicksilver started and turned out to be, like you said, $100 billion companies.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So then, if we're going chronologically, you want to do that?
Yeah.
So then, at some point, I started helping. Every summer or whatever, my brother and I would get moved to a different department. Where one summer we're helping in the shipping department, one summer we're in the receiving. We're like 10 years old or 12 years old. I think my dad was just doing it to keep us, busy. The other employees would babysit us or whatever. And then some days we were working in the shocks, like building shocks. Like my brother and I built like air shocks, and forks and stuff when we were, I don't know, was I 14 or 12 or something like that?
So the Fox Racing shocks that exist now, is that an offshoot of your dad's company?
So, yeah, in a way. So my dad started...
I didn't know that either.
Oh, you didn't?
No,
that's my uncle. So... So my dad started Fox, the motocross Fox, and then my dad came up with original oil and spring shock absorber. It wasn't revolutionary. He just made one that was maybe better than, because they would blow out a lot at that time. And so originally my dad made a rebuild kit. He was selling Coney shocks, Coney shocks.
Yeah.
So my dad, through Fox, was, like I said, he would sell somebody's glove and a shock and all these things. And Coney shocks at the time were the best, but they need to be rebuilt. And so my dad came up with his first product, I think, was this rebuild kit for a shock absorber for Coney shocks. The story he's told is that the guys at Coney found out that he had made a rebuild kit for the shock, and they got pissed because it indicated that the shocks
weren't that great.
Yeah. So they stopped selling shocks to him. So my dad...
which ruined his business.
Yeah, and so he's like, well, screw that. I'm going to build my own shock then. And so out of that desperation, my dad I'm going to make my own shock. Fox shock and red, white, and blue. And so he made the original Fox shock. You could look it up. Nothing too special, but a good shock and popular enough. And then my uncle, who was an engineer by background and a professional gambler at the time, literally a professional.
How do you be a professional gambler at that time?
Playing poker. My uncle was a professional poker player. That's how he made his money.
No way.
Yeah. He started as an engineer, and then he was a single guy, and he started gambling or playing poker at night, and pretty soon he was making more money playing poker than...
Was he counting cards? Like he was that kind of like...
not
was that
counting.
more of a, I guess that's more of a blackjack
I
thing.
think that's more blackjack.
Yeah. But he was obviously smart enough to kind of...
Yeah, and good at it and
yeah,
loved
yeah.
it. And so he started making more money at that, and so he quit his job, and he became this like poker player. And now, that's a real thing. But at the time, so my uncle's doing that and riding dirt bikes with my dad, and then my dad made this shock absorber, and then my uncle, as an engineer, got intrigued. Oh, yeah, shock absorber. That's like up my uncle's alley as an engineer. And so he started, he came up with his concept. I've never heard that story. That's a good story I should find out about. He came up with the idea for the original air shock, the Fox air shock.
Yeah.
So he came and worked for my dad at Fox, came up with the idea for the air shock, and they started selling the air shock. And so it was all underneath the umbrella of my dad's company at the time. And then after a little while, after a year or two, my uncle said, the shock thing's cool. I'm going to start my own company. I'll be across the parking lot. Literally, it was across the parking lot. I'm going to sell shocks to other people, and everything was great. And so, yeah, that's my uncle's company. It's the Shock Absorbers, which has gone on to be...
It's massive, a behemoth.
Massive, yeah.
And he still runs it? Like it's still...
No, it's a public company. And my uncle,
really?
Yeah, he sold a big part of it, and then it turned into a public company. I think my uncle still owns some shares of it, but he's essentially retired. I think he does some engineering for them still.
Yeah.
But, that's...
What a fascinating family.
It's
It's like almost like the first family of motocross.
It's a pretty cool... It's a cool, bizarre, winding road of...
And an incredible way to grow up.
Yeah.
Like the education that you must have got in those early years. I mean, I'm sure it just kind of hasn't really stopped, but that's just a really incredible way to grow up and to get a real life education.
Very, very lucky. Very lucky that my parents had us so included.
Yeah.
Right? It could have been real easy, like, oh, this is the family, this is my business or whatever. And
this is serious, kids.
This is serious. And you guys, go to your school and then go have daycare or something like that. And we could have been like easily, separated from it. But it was like Greg and I in there building shocks, we'd learned how to like assemble things. And I remember one of my favorite things was at the end of the process, you would take this completed shock absorber, stick it in a bucket of water, and wait a little while and see if any bubbles come out.
Yeah.
And if no bubbles came out, then you put it, okay, that one's good.
This one's fine. Yeah, it's sealed up.
That was my job at 12 years old or something. So the shock absorber thing blew up, right? It was huge. And so my dad decided, we're going to form a race team, sponsor some guys, and we'll form a race team to sell shocks, to promote the shock absorbers. And so to make the race team look like an official team, he made gear. A couple sets of gear for the guys, right? And that's the classic, Motocross Fox original, was just to promote the shock absorbers and that whole side of the business. And he said after a few races, people calling up and saying, hey, can I buy that gear? That gear's cool. I want to buy the gear. My dad's like, maybe we should start selling some gear. And so that's so it wasn't even the original idea. The original idea was shock absorbers.
Wow. That is so insane. And to think of what that did to the industry, that changed everything.
It was awesome.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Brunt Workwear, and I have got the brand new Marin boot here to show you guys right now. Over the last couple of years, I just wanted to get rid of doing the sneaker thing. They're not waterproof. They got super dirty, and I would end up with track shoes. I wanted to be able to rock some boots. It just made a lot more sense to wear boots. So I've switched to wearing boots, and now I've switched to wearing these Brunt boots. There's a super short break-in period, and they're lightweight, they're waterproof, they're slip and oil resistant, they're heat resistant, and they're electrical hazard rated. A lot of you guys that listen to this podcast, you're on job sites, you run a machinery, and you actually really need and test all of these features every single day. So now you can finally have durable work boots that are as comfortable out of the box as your sneakers, and over 500,000 customers agree. Brunt didn't just make a durable work boot, they've reinvented comfort for the hardest workers out there. For a limited time only, our listeners get $10 off at Brunt by using the code GypsyGang at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com and use the code GypsyGang and you are all set. And even better, Brunt will let you try this work boot risk-free on the job site. After you purchase, they're going to ask you where you heard about them. So please support our show by telling them that the Gypsy Gang sent you.
And the great part of that for me is that I hated shock absorbers as a kid. I hated the machine shop, and it was loud, and like I was kind of scared of the machines, and the metal shavings like cut you, and like I had to sweep them up, and I hated everything about that. And if we had stayed in that, I would have definitely gone to college and found something that fit me better. But after a while, the clothing thing was doing well and growing. And so one of my first jobs was like a permanent job, was helping a photographer take pictures for the catalog. A guy named Jim Giannatsis, who's like a kind of a legendary motocross photographer. And so I was just like a photography assistant, move the lights, move the product a little bit. So I started doing that, and I learned that good enough, and then he left the company, wasn't with the company anymore. And so my dad, like everything, the thing about my dad, for good and bad, is that if something needs to get done, he'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's a strength and a weakness.
Yeah.
Like everything in our lives. That's one of my philosophies now, is your strength is usually your weakness. You can find a way for it to be a weakness. And so my dad's like, let's start doing the photography. Pete, can you keep helping, right? So now I'm helping my dad do the photography. And then pretty soon I realized, well, I'll do some photography, Dad. I'll take the pictures. So you don't have to come down and take the pictures. So I learned, that was my first job, was product photography.
And so when did you realize that?
I was probably 14 at the time. I was young. I was young when I was doing this.
And did you realize that the I don't want to say fashion, but maybe like the design and that, did you realize like creatively, like I feel good doing this?
No, the photography part, my memory is that I was just, okay, this is fine. It's not building shocks. I don't hate it. And okay, I'll take photos. And another part of that is I have a memory of feeling like, my dad needs me, and my dad needs me to do this. It's like, because of the fact, it wasn't like go work in shipping, there's 10 guys in there and you can just be one of the guys. It was like, this guy's gone, the photographer's gone, and my dad's down here. So shoot, I'm going to take this more seriously. And so I started doing the photography, and that kind of like is where my brain started to open up to all of this. Like, here's the product. Maybe that product could look better, right? And then the marketing. The athletes using it. Maybe a different athlete will. And so it was like the wheels started kind of turning. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Were you creative at all before this? Like, do you remember being good at drawing and like?
Yeah.
So that was a thing for you early.
Yeah, like my thing is in third grade, I did some collage thing in school, and it got an award, and we got all this recognition. And that's when I'm like, shoot, man, I'm pretty good at this art kind of stuff. And so in school, my strengths were art and English.
Yeah.
My mom's an English major. Maybe I got that from her. But those were my strengths. I was terrible. Still to this day, like numbers and all that, my brain just...
That ain't it.
It just wants to shut down.
Yeah.
And when I was young, I'd let it shut down.
Yeah.
Like, because when you're a kid, you're like, I don't need to do this stuff. And you fight it. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to be rested, and I'm going to go after it. I'm going to try to learn it the best I can. But you know where your strengths and your weaknesses are, right? Everybody should.
Yeah.
So I knew that was never going to be my thing.
Man, this is just such a cool story. Like, it's such a unique life. It's such a unique way to grow up, and to then be able to find the thing that you became so good at, you know, and to find something that it's really been like the thing that you've continued to do throughout your life.
Yeah.
At such a young age.
And one thing that I've thought about a lot is that, so at the time O'Neill, you know, O'Neill Racing.
Yeah.
So at the time, like O'Neill had a similar thing happening where it was Jim O'Neill, and then he had sons that I think are a little bit older than my brother and I remember being aware of them, and that one of the sons was like a really good racer. I forgot his name, but he was a really good racer, and he was really serious about racing. And I remember thinking, I don't really want to be a racer. I love motocross. It's like part of who I am and my identity is this whole industry, but I never really thought I'm going to be a great racer. And so I'm going to devote my time and my effort to being a racer. I knew early on, I was like, I like to ride and I like to race, but that's not me. That's not my path, is being a racer. And because early on I got really caught up in the creative, you know, the excitement of like, oh man, this creative thing is, I mean, I started designing at 15, and so that's my thing. My history of like really it clicking is when I was 15, and you know, wanting to sign Rick Johnson. Yeah, I don't know if you know that's the story of the history of that. So somehow, 14, 15, we were going to a lot of the GPs with my dad, and when we weren't in school, and so when I was 15, I went to Washougal with my dad, and RJ was my favorite rider at the time. He was wearing Sinisalo.
Yeah.
And he was my favorite rider because he came from the back. He got shitty starts, and he would come from the back. And that's always been my thing, is like, I like the kind of the underdog guy. You know, I don't really like rooting for the guy, you know, 90% chance he's going to win.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, especially when you're a kid, I loved watching. RJ got a terrible start, and I'd go to the side of the track and I'd watch, he passed two guys, and he passed another guy. And look, he got up to third. Isn't that awesome? Just super pumped on that. So he was my favorite rider at the time. And I talked my dad into going to talk to Rick up at Washougal. And I don't remember too much of that conversation, but I do know that they arranged for me to go meet Rick later. I flew down to Rick's house in El Cajon at 15, and Rick picked me up at the airport, and I had put together like some designs, like, you know, my little pitch, like, Rick, will you please ride for Fox? And here's the designs, and it'll be cool.
At 15?
At 15, it's bizarre.
That would never happen nowadays.
It's crazy.
Not possible. Not happening.
No. Like I have a 15-year-old daughter now, and I'm like, okay, that's what 15 is. I can't believe that I did that at 15. That my dad here, go.
Yeah. That's such a blessing. At least that's what I'm picking up from this, is just like how much accountability and responsibility that your dad let you and your brother have from a very, very young age.
Yeah. I know that at that time that everyone perceived me as older, that I acted older. I think it's because I didn't talk that much. I think I just, was pretty introverted at that time, and I would just sit around and I think people, when you don't talk, maybe, I don't know if it was the way I looked or the fact that I wasn't talking a lot, made people think, oh, he's older than that. So 15, I went down to RJ's. 15, I flew to Finland by myself to work on motocross gear.
No way.
Yeah. I like that story because my memory of that. So my dad and my mom were really close with a guy named Juha that was running Yoko. Do you remember? Do you know the brand Yoko?
No.
A Finnish motocross brand in the early days. So in the early days of moto, a lot of the gear was being made in Finland because of ice hockey. So ice hockey was big in that part of the world.
Yeah. And
the knee pads and the chest protectors was ice hockey, is what the guys like in my dad's time would wear. Jofa and all that stuff was like ice hockey brands. So a lot of the early Sinisalo is Finnish company, Yoko, all those brands were Finnish. And so my dad had a good relationship with the guy who's running one of them, and felt good enough to let me. I flew over there when I was 15. The memory I have is all of a sudden, almost like coming out of a coma, like not being aware of anything, and looking out the window of this airplane as we're coming down to land, and seeing like billboards and like some moving trucks, and realizing, oh fuck, I can't read this. How did I get here? I can't read any of that. What? Like all of a sudden it occurred to me.
It hit you like, I'm 15 and I don't know anything
I don't have a
about
driver's
this country.
license. I don't have any money. Like, how did I get on this plane? That's and I can't read, and I don't. There's no cell phones. Like, how would I get hold of anyone? Luckily, somebody from the company picked me up and took me to the hotel, and for however many days, I'd go from the hotel to the factory and back and forth and back and forth. And that was my whole. Those are examples of my childhood. What a weird child, but cool, right?
Just incredible.
And around all the adults, I was always around adults. It was me in a room full of adults in Finland. Just trying to figure out motocross pants and stuff.
Did you have a sense of the responsibility that you had by being there?
No, which I think is the strength, right? So one of the things that I'm grateful for at the time was that, again, my parents being very modest. My dad was never like, we got to do this and we're going to be this big. And, if you fuck this up, the family's going to struggle. Like,
yeah, we got a lot riding on this.
I had zero of either side of that. I didn't have any of the, like, hey, you do great at this and we'll make $1 million and we'll be rich. My parents I've never heard them talk like that as long as I've lived. And it was never like, oh, if you fuck this up, the whole thing's going to collapse. I had zero of that. So, which is an incredible freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
Right? So Greg and I my older brother Greg and I talk about this as our childhood. It's like, it was all, let's go do cool stuff.
Yeah.
This will be cool.
Be the best you can be.
People like this. Moto guys will like this. Let's do this. This will be cool and it'll be fun and people will dig it. And that was how we judged everything. It wasn't, it was incredibly fun experience for a kid. I'm super grateful.
Because, I'm sure, to play your father's perspective, I'm sure there probably was a lot riding on it. He'd quit his job and he had got a son that was going to do these deals in Europe. But to not translate any of that to you to change your experience or to change the way that you acted, it's pretty special. When
I've asked him about it, he said he didn't feel any pressure or worry or anything like that. It was, again, because of I think the modesty, and my dad was always very careful. And so it was, I don't think that he gave me any responsibility where if I fucked it up, it would really put us in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Because I probably would have somehow felt that, but I never did feel.
And how did that trip go? So you basically went there. So there's this ice hockey gear was the most in line with what moto needed to be. Obviously different, but the way that it was manufactured, the types of protections.
The knee pads, I think, were literally, and the chest protectors and the knee pads for a while were literally ice hockey.
And so they would help make some of the early Fox gear.
Yeah, like the original Fox pants, motocross pants were made in Finland.
And what was different about the early Fox stuff? Was there a lot of innovation in the product back then, would you say?
No, there's not, from there to now, it hasn't changed. It's changed, but it hasn't changed as dramatically as maybe you might think. It was nylon and leather leather at the knees.
Yeah.
And we've tried different things. At one point we were doing Kevlar at the knees. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Kevlar and Axo days. And it's come back to leather, but it was pretty easy for me at that age to be able to have some kind of an active role, because it wasn't like a spaceship or something, right?
Yeah. It wasn't like you were literally doing astrophysics like your dad was a couple of years ago.
But again, the great experience of these people in the factory explaining stuff to me, I'm like, oh, what if we do that? But I wasn't really trying to I wasn't coming in there as a functional expert or trying to change the function. I was coming in like, hey, I'm going to paint this in a way that I'm going to do a color that that's how I got started, was, just contributing that way.
And so to go back to the story with RJ, how did that trip go and end up? Like, obviously he ends up signing with Fox, but...
Yeah, I'll forever be grateful to Rick because he was so nice to me. He was so... It's kind of weird, because his public perception at the time was he was
the bad boy
and all that. But man, he was nice to me. Picked me up at the airport. I'll never forget. Like, in those days, you could actually walk up to the gate.
Yeah.
You can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I got off the plane and he was standing right there. I'm like, fuck, that's Rick Johnson.
Yeah, the Rick Johnson too.
Because I was a huge fan,
Yeah.
Like, fuck, that's Rick Johnson. And I stayed at his house for a couple of days and I showed him like my drawings. And I think I just kind of told him like, here's my ideas for, and, somehow he thought it was cool. He wanted to do it.
And was that a pivotal point in Fox's history, do you think?
Yeah, that was the pivotal.
The pivotal point.
I think that was the pivotal. Because up to that point, one of my other memories that was kind of on the opposite side of started to drive me was before we signed RJ, I remember it was like Barnett era, right?
Yeah.
And my dad and Barnett had a great relationship and he had sponsored Barnett as part of the original Fox team. Barnett was like one of his guys. And it's cool, Mark Barnett used to, when he was Mark was like 16, I don't know if I was 12 or something. Mark, for a while, lived in our house. He lived in the living room and he would train and at our high school and just such a cool thing, right?
That's so raw.
It's so raw. And so before I went down to the RJ thing, my dad's not a designer. My dad's a physicist nerd or whatever. And our gear wasn't that great. It didn't look that great. And we weren't very cool as a brand. My dad hates it when I say that, but it's true. But I remember hearing that we were trying to find somebody. I think Mark had gone to Answer or whatever had happened there. But I remember us thinking, oh, Johnny O'Mara at the time he's on the market. Somebody can sign him for gear or whatever. This is right before I think he went to Answer. And I remember hearing, I don't think I've ever asked Johnny this. I remember hearing that Johnny wouldn't return our phone call because we weren't cool. I remember, and that was again, the cool. It wasn't like you don't have enough money. It's like, oh, I'm not going to consider you're not cool. And it was stuff like that that my brother and I would
That sits with you.
Sits with you.
Yeah.
Because that's
yeah, that hits you in the heart, dude.
And that's you're talking about my family.
Yeah.
Right? We're not cool. I'm going to make this cool.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so then I'm I think that probably woke me up. I'm like, fuck, I better come up with a cool idea, some cool stuff and show, hey, we can be cool. And so I went to RJ and thank God I convinced him. But I think that was the pivotable thing because RJ was cool and he signed on that you guys can be cool. And the first gear I made was it was fine. It was white gear, it's whatever. But then the other big thing was RJ was he was I felt to this day, he was like a big brother to me. He was so nice and so supportive and wanted to do cool things. And the zebra, if you remember the original zebra.
Yeah.
One of my early memories is first I'm just trying to do cool like everyone else is being cool. And then I'm like, oh, fuck, this is working. I'm going to try something crazy now. And now I'm going to really go for it. And so I came up with this idea for zebra gear, and we made a sample in Finland. And I went to Mammoth, the Mammoth Motocross race, and I had it in a box. I'll never forget. I had it in a box. I went to the condo where Rick was, and Rick and one of the Simo brothers from, No Fear and what was before? It was No Fear and Bad Boy and all those things.
Yeah.
They were good friends, and he was there. And I went over to Rick's condo and I pulled this zebra pant out of the of a box. I said, "Hey, Rick, this is the idea I'm working on. What do you think?" Because I thought if I can get Rick on board, then we're done. It's going to happen, right? Without Rick on board, it's dead. And I pulled it out and I showed it to him, and he said, "Oh, this is cool." And because Rick was doing crazy stuff at the time, and whichever SEMO brother was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. You're doing cool stuff." And like it gave me such a confidence boost. And I went back. I'm like, "We're doing this. We're going to do this. Rick loves it. This is happening." And so it was from that point forward, like the zebra and everything. It's like, okay, now we can go.
You kind of found your like creative identity
And confidence.
in a way,
And confidence.
yes, and belief that you could do that.
Yeah. And the other part of that, I strongly believe, is without Rick, zebra wouldn't be zebra, because you can't do crazy, and you need somebody like Rick to validate it and to make it into the magic that it can be, right?
Yeah.
So thank God for that. Thank God for Rick.
Can
for
you
all
look,
of it?
Can you look up? Can you type up Rick Johnson Fox Zebra? Just to.
I think it was the Jeep. He wore it at Unadilla.
Yeah.
He only wore it one time.
And then go images. Go down. That's the rehash of it.
There's Rick and...
That's the Motocross Nation stuff, right?
Yeah.
Keep going down. Where is it?
Maybe Unadilla? Do you have to look up? So that's my first stuff right there. That
was the first stuff that you signed Rick with?
Yeah. And that was just...
That one there?
Yeah. In my mind, that was just getting us to, like, in the game with everyone else.
Yeah, yeah. Is that it there? That's an actual
That's
zebra?
Bradshaw.
Is that Bradshaw there?
Yeah.
Go down. Keep going down. Maybe type in, go just in the top, Unadilla, UNA.
It was
DILLA. Where is it?
Yeah. It was on the cover. That shows you that he only wore it once, you know?
That's crazy that he only wore it once.
Or once in a big race. Somebody will probably...
Is that that's one of the original ones there?
That looks original.
But either way, completely iconic.
Yeah.
And to the point where that gear right now is still cool. That's the marking of cool, is when 30, 40 years later, it still would sell.
And still means that. It's still such a iconic design, you know, for moto. So I did that, and then he wore it once, and then I think the next year, Bradshaw and all the chicken and everybody started wearing it.
Why did Rick only wear it once?
Because I think we lost Rick right after that.
I
think that's when it happened. Or did Rick get hurt? No, Rick got hurt after. He wasn't in Fox. We gotta do something with Rick.
Yeah.
My memory, I remember good memories.
Yeah, not the bad.
That's another thing. That's a thing I know about myself. I think that's a good quality to have.
Yeah, to delete the
delete
the
or
stuff.
put them in a box or in a drawer in your brain, and don't let them out. You know,
Yeah.
Don't spin on those.
Yeah.
That's a bad thing that happened. Bury that and move on.
That's like they say in golf, you want to have a short memory.
Yeah.
Just delete the bad shot. Let's go and start fresh. That is very hard to do.
It is hard.
Because if you think in that golf context, you just carry that bad shot.
Yeah.
Creates the next bad shot, the next bad shot. There's a momentum that those things can create.
Yeah. I remember when I was at some point at the peak of us doing, Fox doing cool stuff. I remember, I've had a bunch of things fail and suck, but I remember telling whoever it was, I don't know if it was my dad or my brother or somebody, I'm like, I'm like a baseball player. You're paying me to have hit home runs, and I'm not going to hit, I'm going to strike out sometimes, but I'm going to hit home runs. And the reason I'm kind of good at this is because I have more hits and more home runs than I have strikeouts.
Yeah.
But you got to keep getting up there and swinging.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're playing it safe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
had to tell myself that too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh fuck, now there's this pressure. Don't fuck up.
Yeah. But the ability to fail with a certain perspective is one of the most maybe like one of the most helpful things that you can have in life, business, in anything. Because, you know, there's a saying like you win or you learn. And it's so true. Like you have to look at failures as lessons and not dwell on them as failures, because you're going to fail a lot in life. It's just completely unavoidable. But if you can be the kind of person that can fully accept a failure and back yourself to hit another home run at the next time at bat, and then, okay, you might strike out, but you have to have that home run mentality every time you're at the plate, regardless of how many strikes, you know, that you've had before that.
And to try to avoid taking any of it personally. Either way. Don't take the failures personally.
Or the home runs.
Or the home runs. That idea, it's that idea failed, that idea worked, and I'm just going to keep I put the idea out there, and it's either received well or it's not, but it's not me. When it fails, it's not me, and then when it succeeds, it's not me, right? It's like I just put the idea out there. The idea came from wherever, right? That gets into a weird, like, kind of a weird headspace, because you need the confidence to be putting the things out there. But I think if you get too caught up in it in your own, because creativity is a weird thing. People like that are more artists, they get like, I know a lot of artists, and some of them are like, it's so personal.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to like criticize the idea, and that's like super unhealthy, especially in doing this kind of stuff. You need to be able to sit in front of a bunch of people, put an idea out, and if it sucks, it sucks. If it's good and nobody believes in it, you got to fight for it. But like, people get like very emotional.
Yeah. Was it always like that for you, that you were able to keep that kind of detachment, or have you had to learn that the hard way?
I think I was born with a detachment.
Okay.
For good or for bad. There's a little bit of a detachment there.
Okay. Have you ever thought too much about it? I've
thought about it, but I've also, and I realized that I think that that's me. I don't know that I'm ever getting out of that. And some about life is accepting, like, this is who I am, and I'm going to just, because that almost goes to the detachment thing. Like, if you just, now I'm going to beat myself up because I'm too detached.
Yeah, you're attached to not being attached.
Yeah. It's, you're born a certain way, and if it's working for you, that's the other thing. Is it working for me? Is it hurting me? Yeah. The detachment, that level of some kind of a detachment, I think helped me throughout most of my life. And so I'm, grateful for it. If it was fucking me up, if it was ruining my life, then you got to fix that. Like, there's, the thing is when I was young and, I consider it detached or, introverted. That's how I viewed it. My brother and my family would be like, oh, you're people have a problem with you because you're arrogant. And like, I think I was just super misunderstood. I think I had this confidence, a detached confidence. And I wasn't like trying to like win people over. You put an idea out there and like, here's the idea. I'm like, hey, buddy, I want to like my idea.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've had to work at detachment. I'm at the place where I think that that's the move. But I think when I started this, I'd never really had to fully examine my ego. Like I kind of, all through my 20s, especially like the film career, I was like very attached to my ideas, and I was very attached to the outcome, and it was very like me. Like I was a creative, and I was this and I was that, and this is my idea, this is my project, my baby. And then when I started doing this, I kind of realized that wouldn't work, and that if I kept going down that road, this wouldn't be a sustainable thing. Like I felt like my ego would be the thing that would fuck this up, and I really liked it and I really enjoyed it, and it was a thing that I then kind of really started to like dive into, and in a way that I'd never had before. It was just like wasn't on my radar, if that makes sense.
You liked this, or you liked your ego?
No, I liked the podcast, and like so I saw this. I was like, I like this. Like this is great. This is fun. I saw the business side of it. I saw it being successful. I could see the future of it pretty clearly. And I was like, your ego would be the thing that could fuck this up. And that forced me to look into that, you know. But that's where, like, I agree with what you're saying about detachment. And, you know, there's the thing about not wanting a bad comment is that you also can't want a good comment. You know, like there's two sides to the coin with all of it in a very similar way to what you're saying. But I had to learn that through time. That wasn't something that came naturally in the way that you're describing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there was definitely a detachment there and for me, and I would almost put things out like I know for sure there were times when I put a design out because I didn't have to like go through a checks and balance or anything. I could send stuff straight to a factory, you know? And sometimes I would do that because I wasn't really sure about it, but I wanted to see.
Yeah.
And so this is another thing. I consciously didn't check in with people. I wouldn't say, God, I'm not sure about this design. I'm going to ask other people.
Yeah.
Because now I'm affected by that. I'm affected by other people's like reactions to something that I made, and I'm trying to keep it purer than that. Like, I think this is good. I'm gonna send it to the factory, and that's, I guess, goes back to that baseball, analogy that I used. It's like I would just send it out and like
be okay with the strikeout.
Yeah. Okay, that didn't work.
What was
instead of like, oh fuck, I'm not sure. let me go ask 10 people.
Yeah.
Like I hated that. I don't like that process.
Yeah. Yeah, and you were just okay with whatever it was going to be.
Because it kept me like in a more pure creative mindset, right? Where it's like, okay, I'm just creating and I'm going to put it out there instead of like, oh, I'm designing for other people. Not really. Ultimately, obviously I am. I don't wear this stuff. I'm not, I want Rick to love it. I wanted Rick to love the gear and all that, but I don't know.
You are right though, because so like for this, right? Like I can't think about what other people would think of everything I say.
Yeah.
I just have to do it and put it out and hope that it's okay. Knowing that it's not going to be okay for everybody. But if you go into this back and forward and trying to appease everybody, like you're playing a completely zero-sum game. Like it's not possible. And then you can just get caught in this like weird loop, and then there's like audience capture where you're doing the thing for this audience and they're molding you and you're molding them. That's not genuine at all. And that is kind of the space that you were in, where you were trying to create your own thing, and it was like your own product and your own vision. It had to be accepted by other people. So ultimately there is feedback that you have to take into consideration. But that process was insular in a way.
Yes. And so I got caught up thinking about your feedback loop on what you're doing, right? Because you could really like, oh, people want me to do this, and so I'm going to do this more. And now I'm like almost a character of myself, and now I'm boring because that's all I'm doing is this loop, right? And so my feedback loop, I was lucky in this weird way that back then I would design, and by the time it got released,
you were over it.
I was.
It
was gone, right? It wasn't like I would design something and like immediately, oh shoot, people hated that, so I'm going to do something different. It was so far out that I had designed like 2 or 3 different things by the time I got that feedback loop. But I would get the loop because I would go and like I'd check sales, and I'd be like, okay, oh wow, that the Zebra sold good and this one didn't do good, and then I would check myself. I'm like, okay, that people don't like that. They don't like that color or that design. Okay, I'll do less of that. And people like this. Okay, I'm going to explore that. But if, it wasn't that I wasn't going to say, well, fuck it. I like this and I don't care if nobody likes it. I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
It was because I'm trying to make things that people like, right? That when I think back to what is this all meant? It's a lot of it is the best part is how much it meant to people. Like, the Zebra, the people.
I have gear that I can think of, like Hangtown 2004, Ricky Carmichael, Seabiscuit gear. Bang.
Yeah.
Iconic, bro.
Yeah.
You know, like there is things that like that does mean something to me. Like it stuck with me, that image, you know, and it captured like there was a passion that I had for the sport, and there was the way that I wanted my life to go in the future. Like it does mean something. It's a part of people's life and identity and their story of their own life, you know.
And it's not, it's not life or death. But it's pleasure. It makes life more interesting. I think since I was a kid, I thought of one of the things I would refer to is that, especially when I was younger, I loved Star Wars. Right. When I was so lucky, whenever Star Wars came out, I was 10 years old or something.
Oh,
like that.
you were just right
right
there.
in the sweet spot. Right?
It was for you.
Every day I would imagine I was Luke Skywalker, right?
Yeah.
And as I got older, I realized, wow, how lucky I am to have had that. Everyone's got their thing, right? And I had Star Wars. And thank God for George Lucas for making that. You know, that made my life more fun to live because I had that. And not that it's at the level of Star Wars, but you making things that this podcast, these designs, it's bringing joy to people's lives.
Yeah.
Maybe it's superficial, but you know what? That's all I got. You know.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what we have, though, right? Like to get to the very end of the rabbit hole. Like I'm gonna die, you're gonna die. Like I don't know what life was like before I was alive, and I'm guessing that after I go, it's gonna be a lot like that. So it's like, what are we doing in between? And it's like at least for me, how I always say it is the meaning of life is to make meaning of life, and it's like you can give the moments in between some kind of meaning, and like those kinds of things, they fill the time in between. They capture you, they inspire you, and I mean, Fox did that, for a lot of people, and it also, like, I think that there's something to be said for culture at large, like the things that people do shape culture, and I think culture is almost like humanity's software in a way. Like you have a computer and that computer is useless. Like it's hardware and it's useless without software that runs on the hardware. So it's like you could just have the most boring game. You could have Snake, or you could have Elden Ring, or you could have Star, And I think that culture is very similar to like the kind of software that runs on like humanity, right? So like you have motocross and it could be this boring, just you race, you rock up, everyone wears a white thing, or a black, and then they go around the track and no one celebrates. But you add these layers on top of the thing that you're doing, and that becomes culture, and that culture has so much to do with the impact that it has on people's lives. And so I really think culture is underrated, and what you guys do, like what a bunch of brands did in those early days, the Terrafirma movies, like it creates the culture that then keeps the thing evolving in the kind of direction that makes it either good or bad. Like, and culture can be negative as much as it can be positive.
No, I think you bring up a really good point about the culture. When you think about the culture of moto in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a lot of culture around the sport, right? Whether it was the parties or the video releases or the gear,
the clothing, everything.
Yeah. It was fun. It made it fun.
And it laid the foundation to make the industry what it is now and the sport that it is. Because everything we have now is a result of everything that we had then, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard for me to think about where it should go next,
Yeah, true way. And I mean, you're kind of having a role in that now, in a way.
Yeah, and there's two things. There's the ride, like just being a fan at the Supercross race, or being somebody who likes to go ride dirt bikes, right? We were always trying to connect the two things. It was, the Rick Johnson or Damon Bradshaw, whoever is racing, on Saturday or Sunday, and then the rest of the week, it's the guy who's riding, right, and living that life. So you're trying to marry those two things. It's not just a spectator sport like football or something, right, or soccer, and you just watch it but you don't participate.
That's one of the most unique and underrated things about our sport.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. And that's where I think that you can influence, or like the influence that culture has is quite important, because it is a participant sport. Like I rode Monday and I was at the race Saturday.
Yeah. That's one of the things that worries me a little bit about where the sport is now, where it's headed, is that the bikes, the track that the pros are on is so far removed, I think, from where the guy is. I don't know how good of a rider you are where you're riding, but compared to the average weekend guy that's riding, it's gone like so far. Where in the 80s or something, I could probably get on Rick's bike. I was an okay rider. I could probably get on Rick's bike, go around the track a little bit. I know the whoops were like, even back then, were too much, but now it's like, I think the gap has gotten so big that I don't know. It's one of the things that I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I don't know if I'm as comfortable with that gap being so big. Especially the bikes.
What would you do to change it, or like what do you think could be done to change it?
I think the bikes are too powerful. I think we should F1 in the whole situation a little bit, and like having some restriction, more restriction on the bikes. I think that they're too powerful, which makes the tracks, you build tracks for the bike, and now the whole thing is like scary. My whole experience working with riders a lot, the only time that anyone ever told me that they were scared was a couple times, guys, I think RJ was one of them, they were scared of the first turn. I said, oh, fuck, that's, going into the first turn is
scary.
Guys,
I don't even think about that now.
It's scary going into the first turn.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, I don't know, the whole thing scary? Because the rest of the track wasn't scary. That sticks in my mind. The other thing that sticks out in my mind is, I'm trying to remember who it was. It was Reed or some guy that was Chad or somebody that was right in that transition between the 250s and the four strokes. Yeah. Or maybe it's Fro or somebody, but they said on a two-stroke, you'd come around a turn, Supercross turn or something, you kind of go on the inside line and you screw it up a little, and you're not going to make the jump, and and there's a double right out of the turn. You screw up a little and you back off and you roll it. You're not going for it. Said on the four strokes, you do the same thing, and fuck it, every time you have to gas it. You have to go for it because the bike can do it. And so that, to me, when I heard that, I'm like, fuck, that's scary. Like that's just seems scary to me, because now, like, that's Chad Reed or whoever it was that told me, like, okay, what about the guy that's like 18th? Yeah. Like, he's doing that too. Like, those guys are going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt. So, I mean, I think there's too many injuries. Like, that bothers me a lot. And I wish that we were doing something like, hey, let's just make it a little safer, more about racing and less about like gymnastics. But now maybe I'm too old for this. I don't know.
No, I mean, there's definitely an argument. And I think, like, when you can see how many of the best riders in the world, like, you kind of have to take Jet out of it, the injury that Jet got. And, I mean, even Tomac. Like, I think that's maybe not my problem, but, like, that's what makes it hard to argue, right? Is, like, look at what happened to Jet. Out for a season, and he just dabbed his foot. Tomac dabbed his foot, broke his leg. Like, I feel like that could happen whether you're on a 125 or... So those are kind of like they're always going to happen in moto injuries. But then I think you look at like the Jerry Robbins and you look at the Austin Faulkner crashes, and you just... the speeds that they're going and the size of the jumps. And one of my big things, like, I wish that for Supercross specifically, they would make a tire for that. You get Dunlop, you get someone, and you go, all right, the knobs need to be shorter. Like, do we need the same knobs at Unadilla in a Supercross stadium. You know, like there's flat track tires. I don't know if you've ever done flat track.
No.
But it's like those things hook up and there's really not even knobs on them. You know, so like maybe there is a way that we can make a tire that's just not going to destroy the tracks in the way that the tracks get destroyed now. Like I was at Star Racing last week and I watched Christian Craig just fucking rip a moto. Like as fast as Cooper Webb, right? Mm-hmm. And then gets to the race weekend and he's just scared of the ruts. You know, like there's just every jump face, the whole way across, there's ruts. Supercross never used to be like that.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw like a sliding inside block pass? They just kind of don't exist now because every single turn has 5-6 ruts in it and you're in a slot car track essentially. And it's the same. You go to Parla last year, you get the whole shot. They're all running. Now they're not even running knobbies. They're running fucking scoop tires. That 450s, fast bikes, super deep.
Yeah.
And every track is just this lines of ruts. And to me, that's the thing that is destroying the racing side of it. You know, like I always reference that. Remember Millville, James, and Trey Kennard? It was in like 2014, I think. They just had like that crazy battle. Yeah. And they're just moving and sliding. They're just all over the track. Yeah. Like they're racing. That's gone. We just don't have that anymore.
And it's a big loss, right? So I don't know. I don't know how we get that back. Somebody's got to, like the things you said about the tires and things that you need to detune or you need to make things more uniform. The goal needs to be that we're trying to make the racing better, and to make the racing better, it has to be a little safer.
Yeah.
Because the guys they can't be that scared. They can't be scared of getting hurt because now you're not going to race at 110%, you know? And there's too many guys getting hurt. It used to be season would start and you're like, oh, I wonder if anyone's going to get hurt. Now it's like, how many guys are going to get hurt? Nobody. You're not going to, the top 20 guys, you're going to lose a lot of them every year. It's like, holy shit. When are we going to change this?
Well, and I would use the analogy like basketball, right? Like imagine if you had a season where Steph Curry, LeBron James, James Harden, you know, like I'm not a basketball guy, but like.
Well, the best example is football.
Yeah.
Because look at what football's doing. You know, basketball doesn't maybe have the same injuries, but football's had a lot of injuries. And so look at, American football?
A little bit, yeah. That's probably the thing I follow the most other than.
I love American football. And look at all the changes that they've made, helmets and the kickoffs. And whether you like this stuff or not, their goal is they're trying to make things safer.
Yeah.
You know, you can't hit the guy, tackle the guy a certain way. Like, you know, some people say, oh, that sucks. But, you know, you have to do something to
keep the stars in the game.
Keep the stars in the game and keep the games close and competitive.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's one of I was talking to Jimmy Button the other day when he did the pod, and we kind of had a pretty lengthy discussion about it. I saw
some of that. It was good.
And it's just like, and now I found out on the weekend, actually, that there is a new competition director at Feld. So for the average person listening to this that doesn't understand the landscape and how it works. So you've got Feld is the promoter. So they're the ones that are in charge of filling up the stadiums, getting the stadiums, doing the TV deals, the content, they're the ones that are promoting the show of Supercross. And to me, racing is the show, right? And then you've got the AMA that is basically in charge of the rules of competition. And those two things are at odds with each other. And I don't know if you've ever heard my privateer take, but basically I just think we should go to, there's like 120 dudes sign up to race Supercross, and there's 40 dudes in the main event. So there's 80 guys that won't make the thing that we're actually paying to see. And yet 80% of the schedule is around these guys on the track. To me, that's ass backwards. You don't have 80% of the NFL season dedicated to the dudes that don't make the starting team, right? Yep. Or you don't have a half-court game out the back of the of Madison Square Garden to determine who are the 5 players that sit on the bench for the Nets and the Knicks. Like, just it's a professional sport, right? But there's an odds there because, hey, Feld might want that. Feld might want to go to a more professional, we've got the guys, here's our starters, here's our stars of the show. Like, these are the guys that we're here to see, and these are the ones we want to promote. But the AMA gets all the entry fees of all 120 guys. There's privateers. There's one in particular who I know the stats. $60,000 in entry fees have gone to the AMA, and this guy's made 3 main events. So there's some dueling things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but there's now a competition director at Feld who I think is probably going to try and make some more progressive changes to make the competition better, which I think speaks exactly to what you're saying. One of my big arguments, right? I was talking to Carmichael about this the other day. He hadn't heard the take, but I'm like, why the fuck are they allowed to run scoop tires at Parlour? They only do it for the start because they've tilled the start so deep to try and bring the speeds down because, like you said, they're so dangerous with 40 guys going into that first turn, right? So now every guy on a 250 is willing to be scared the entire time that he's out on the track because he knows that if he doesn't have a scoop, he's not going to get the start. And then it is ruining the tracks, which is making it way more... So to me, it's so logical what's happening, and no one's made the call. And in every other motorsport, Formula One, like, do you follow Formula One much?
I have in the past, but not lately.
McLaren had like a front wing that was flexing a lot, and it was giving them like a massive advantage. In one weekend, the FIA steps in and says it is only allowed to flex this many millimeters. McLaren had to change their front wing.
Yeah.
On a dime, dude. So you're telling me that you can't, at Parlour, this first weekend, go, no scoops at Parlour. Everyone's on the same.
Yeah.
You can run a normal tyre, MXC 332, whatever the fuck you want to run. They're all in the truck. They all ride on them. You just literally say to them on the day, you can't do it.
Yeah. I'm with you. Like the other thing, I'd get rid of the metal grates on the starts.
Yeah.
I think it's made it too even.
Yeah.
Like you don't, it's safer when it's more spaced. You know, if everybody's like, you're trying to funnel everybody at the same time and it's easier to get a good start, you don't want that.
And makes qualifying not matter.
Yeah.
Qualifying used to be so important because the first guy would look behind the gate to see what rut.
Yeah.
Like you're taking away, like you want to reward. Sport is designed to show you who the best guy is. Mm-hmm. So you want to make the rules in a way that elevates the best guy to the top and incentivizes the best guy to do the best, you know?
So historically, that was the AMA. If the AMA was going to do, like, that would be their role, right?
Yeah. But they don't.
Yeah.
Nothing's ever been done.
No.
And Feld, then they've got to have the back and forward with the AMA, and it's just got to become, like, they're in a relationship. And I'm guessing at times it's like any relationship where it's just not 100% comfortable at all times, you know? So to Feld, they're just like, fuck it. Just why rock the boat? We'll do the racing. We'll put on the race. Like, but I think the sport is elevating to the point where just that's not good enough and that's not acceptable. And you have to make change. Baseball, they do the pitch clock now. We went to the Angels game last night. It was awesome. It was so much better because the game like actually went faster. Like it became an enjoyable experience to go. Someone bet a ton of pitchers fucking hated it.
Yeah. There needs to be somebody, some group in charge of making decisions that are better, the best thing for the health of the sport.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have all these factions, like you said, everyone's got like their different agendas and they're going to, you know, and then they're going to fight it out. You know, the bike guys are going to keep trying to make the bikes a little bit better and a little bit faster. And it's it's dysfunctional.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. So to go rewind a little bit. So when did Fox emerge to become like the real powerhouse that it is? Like, it's obviously like the organic growth and the way that you guys did it. It was this family business.
Mm-hmm.
But there is some point where Fox becomes Fox.
Yeah.
What in your mind, when was that?
So peak Fox to me was the RC Bubba James, like, the Stewart Carmichael era where they were either it was James on the 125 and RC when he was on a 250, or it was when they were both on the 450s or something. It was like that to me is peak, kind of the peak experience.
And so
partly for me, and then maybe for the overall of the company.
But there had to be a point before that where it was, maybe that's just the way I would see it.
I said peak.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be, I would agree that that's probably like the peak of like just dominance within the industry. But was there a point before that where it really turned into like a beast of a company? Because at least to me, Fox was, I don't know, maybe before that. Like, that's my generation, right?
Okay,
like,
what do you think is before? Like,
maybe I'm wrong, but I've just always had it in my mind. Like, even before that, kind of like 03, 04, like, I guess Fox to me did seem like the dominant player in the industry.
So this kind of the sequence of the dominant players was JT, obviously, dominant for so long. Then Axo kind of came out of nowhere and was dominant with Bradshaw, Stanton, that whole era. And then Fox came after that. So and we had it for it was a long.
That's what I mean. It's like, I think that Ricky and James was like that was peak.
Yeah.
But even before that, I just felt like it was the dominant company.
Well, we went RJ, and to me, like, the athletes is such a good indicator of like how things are going. Yeah. So we went RJ, and then we went Bradshaw and Matasevich, but then we lost Bradshaw to Axo, and then Axo became we had from JT to Axo, we never got to number one. We were like always, second, third, somewhere in there. Axo moves into the number one position, and maybe we were second or third, I would say, at that period. And then it was we emerged after that. We partly because of things that Axo did wrong, and partly things that we did right. But that to me is the kind of sequence of it.
What do you think you guys got right?
So, part of it is we grew up. So, JT was run by adults and Axo was definitely run by adults, and, we were still kids. Axo was, you remember the Axo? Axo was so great and so strong. And, what's cool for me on all of this is that like almost everybody that I talk about, I knew. Right.
It doesn't sound like there was ever any like animosity with people.
No, I never had. My dad wasn't that's not who my dad is. And so he didn't, feed that into us, because I think a lot of that is learned from parent to child.
And a lot of that's common too in brands where like everybody else sucks. Yeah. Suspension guys, every motor guy, everyone else's suspension shit. Every other motor guy doesn't know what they're doing.
It's a bad way to live. You know? And from a young age, that's one of the other things with my older brother and I. From a young age, it was our thought process was make moto better. Because we didn't, we watched football when we were kids. We didn't really watch baseball or those things. But moto wasn't really respected. It wasn't like, people like, oh, motocross, or they looked down at motocross because. Going back into American history, there was like the Wild Bunch, with those movies and stuff, and that whole Harley thing was super negative, and Hell's Angels, and that was like motocross was part of that.
And freestyle didn't help that either.
Yeah, freestyle didn't help. but it did help in other ways. I wouldn't bag on freestyle. So we wanted our goal from young is like, let's get moto bigger and more respected. It wasn't like, let's take away from other people. Let's grow this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because we didn't really look at, going back to what I said earlier, it wasn't really looking at this from a dollar standpoint. It wasn't, we weren't making decisions based on making money. We were like, let's make things cool. We always had enough food to eat, and always had enough, like, family had a car and a house and things. And there was never that drive for like, let's be millionaires or anything like that. It was from a young age, like, let's make this cool. Like, let's make it so that more people like motocross. And I think motocross is a good sport, and because it's kind of all we have. So let's like, this is our chance. It's,
and it is the underdog thing too, right?
Yeah, that underdog thing that I really like.
Yeah, yeah.
So I forgot what the original question was, but
just when it kind of started to become like, because at some point, right, like you guys are a humble family that is just this passion project, but at some point it turns into like a multi-million-dollar, turning over multi-millions of dollars, and like that's a thing you have to take seriously in a different kind of way, right? Like new levels, new devils kind of thing. So it's like, when did it turn into that thing?
So one of the really interesting lessons, and it goes back to something you and I talked about earlier, is that when we lost Bradshaw, we lost RJ, and then we lost Bradshaw, and those were like gut punches. For me, for sure, those were gut punches, because RJ was like my big brother, and Damon was like my younger brother, and like I was taking those things.
It was family.
It was very family.
Yeah.
It was very like, fuck, I thought we were bros, man. And when we lost RJ and then we lost Bradshaw, it was like, oh my God, that's really emotionally hurt. Like the emotional, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to lose some sales. It was a fucking emotional wreck. But what was good about it is, we went to, our next guy that we had was Mike Byer. I don't know if you remember that. He was on the cover of one of our catalogs. And then Doug Henry out of nowhere, and so it forced us to look inward at ourselves. What are we doing? What are we doing from a business standpoint? What are we doing from product design? Like, it changed from every Monday talking about, oh, how did our guys do, to every Monday talking about, how are we doing? What are we doing? We weren't caught up in the PR of, did Damon win this weekend? And so everything's fine. So we focused on product. We got back to product, and it was that's a big shift. Greg and I talked about it a lot. Like, that was a really important chapter in the history of the company, was the gut punch of losing the top guys. And like, okay, we have to come up with something. Like, what are we going to do now? Let's make this good. Let's focus on what we can control, and let's do the best we can at it. And so we made some decisions back then about, factory. Where are we making stuff? What are we designing? Like, what's the customer experience? Those are the kind of things that we focused on more during that chapter, which made us a much better company.
Yeah, and what was the result of that?
We changed factories. We were one of the, we got more aggressive with sourcing, the stuff that these are all things that I normally hate.
Yeah. This is all the boring shit.
The boring shit. So we introduced one of our big things, like Jim Hale. Do you know who Jim Hale was? Jim Hale was the guy, the AXO. So AXO was Remo Berlesi over in Italy, and then Jim Hale, who worked for O'Neill, he started AXO in the U.S. And Jim, and what he did was really the heyday of the amazing AXO era was Jim Hale's, underneath Jim Hale. He took, Bradshaw from us, and he was the king and making things so cool. And I'm trying to remember, what was I doing at his office? There was one day I was in his office for something. Again, how weird is this? You're a big competitor. Biggest
competitor.
And I'm in his office. Because we used to go to Alpine Star in Italy, and we'd go to, AXO in Italy. And, it was very like that tribe vibe, and when I was young. So I know all these people from a different not like a competitive standpoint. But I remember talking to Jim Hale after he had, taken number one away and was the coolest guy. His company was the coolest. And what we did is we moved manufacturing and we changed our motocross pant price to $139. I'm trying to remember where we were before. 169, 189. Axo was making everything in Italy, which is getting more and more expensive. We moved our stuff to, I think, Korea, which at first was a big failure, but then we fixed things and we learned but we were able to bring the price down on pants. And we got it to $139 and it started to really work. As weird as that is, because price never really was our thing. But I remember Jim Hale being in his office and it was kind of, I don't know, the vision that I have of that conversation was that Axo was like going like this right when I'm talking to him. And he's like, the thing that I never saw coming, the best thing you guys ever did was that $139 pant. And I'm like, oh, wow. That was cool to hear somebody like actually him, your biggest competitor, like be humble enough to like be nice enough to say that, And that's when I'm like, oh, there's more to this than just, who's cool and who's fast and there's more to the business thing. Because that's when I started maybe I was getting old enough to understand that part of it.
And was it as much your brother, like was he more of the businessy guy?
Yeah.
So it was
and my
very
dad,
like
Greg and my dad, yeah.
So it was very like you were creative and you were trying to live more in that space, and then Greg and your dad were more of like the business kind of guys.
Yeah, back in those days, Greg was in charge of sourcing and sales and more of the infrastructure stuff, and I was marketing and design. I was doing all of the design all by myself. I don't remember what year. For a long time, I was like
really
grinding it out.
What year do you think you would have stopped?
Catalogs.
Or not stopped, but what year did you get help with it?
Well, I graduated high school in '86. I was and then from that point, I was designing everything. Like '88, I think early '90s, maybe.
Yeah,
it was like 4 years where I was designing and doing all the catalogs, all of it, the full, which again is such a blessing.
Yes,
and that designers that after I had all that experience and then I hired designers and stuff, I realized, wow, they're in their little bubble here and they don't see like
the big picture
of it. And it's so helpful to see that big picture without letting it control you. Like we talked about it at the beginning, being just enough detached from it. But, I would design the product. I'd take the pictures. I'd put it in the catalog. I'd do the ads and then put it on the rider and then all the way back to the start. So I had the full experience.
And I think the biggest thing that then lets you do, I think that helps with scale, because then you're in a position, like a management position, where you understand all of those roles.
Yeah.
And then as you scale and as you onboard new people, you then are able to effectively manage these people because you have touched all of those parts of the business. I think, like, at least for me with the podcast, when I first started, I did everything, like every edit, the whole deal, right?
Yeah.
And then you bring people on and then you train them in the way that you do it, and you train them, like, you can kind of build the culture based on, like, this is how I've always done it. This is my vision. I think that businesses struggle when you have people in management that don't fully understand the scope, but it's just not always possible for people in those kind of management positions to, like, be able to do every part of their business.
I agree 100%. Yeah, exactly. It's one of the big, I wish Elon Musk had been before me, because I don't know if you read his book.
I have it, but I haven't read it.
I've read it twice.
Oh, really?
I'll read it probably 10 more times before I die. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. And he kind of blows up, like his story is kind of blows up a lot of those preconceived ideas or rules that were in place, about how important engineering is and over design. And you should fucking read that book, dude.
I have it. I literally have it sitting on my desk.
if you struggle with it, the first few chapters are kind of boring. It's like his early childhood and him and his dad and like all that stuff. And then he goes to Canada, and then when he gets to the U.S. is when it starts, and he gets involved with PayPal and stuff. That's when it's like
Crazy.
fucking goes off. And then, I mean, I think without a doubt, and I've had this argument with people, without a doubt, I think the most impressive and important human being in the history of humanity is Elon Musk. Read the book and let's talk. I mean, I didn't know. I knew a little bit about him. I'm like, fuck, the guy's rich and he probably got super lucky. And then you read his book and you're like, fuck, that guy worked hard.
No, he's a builder.
He's like hold the hammer himself builder.
Yeah.
Sleep on the roof of the building builder. Like shit that I thought I committed, but that guy fucking committed.
What do you make of him now?
I don't see, when you read the book, I don't know that he's changed that much.
Yeah. Okay. So you have context.
Yeah. You read the book. Like, when you think about all the other billionaires and stuff and how are they living their lives? He doesn't have a yacht. He doesn't have I think he's got a plane. I think that's the thing he's had.
But that's functional.
Functional. Yeah. He doesn't have a yacht.
Plane buys you time.
He got rid of all his houses at one point. I think he's got a house again, but fuck. I don't know what's going on in that brain, but
yeah, it's some
I think he's unbelievable.
What do you make of I guess, because I've always been the biggest Elon fan, and like since January 20, I'm a bit like, weird. And I'm not even not aligned with the politics. I think more like personally, and like the Twitter thing, and I'm just like, I'm on your page. I think he's one of the more brilliant people on the planet. Mm-hmm. But to see a person just be completely taken over by a fucking social media app on a phone, I'm like, how are you so smart and so dumb? Like, to me, that addiction of like that Twitter addiction and the way that he interfaces with a fucking social media app tells me that he's not as smart as I thought he was. In a way, like people are.
I think you're misreading that. I think that it shows how human he is because he's just like you and me, or like maybe he's got flaws that you and I don't have, but he's going to have flaws. Read the book, understand his whole concept with Twitter. Of course, he does knucklehead stuff, but fuck, he's doing it. He's like, he's not telling his 20 people that work for him, like, hey, write these fucking really safe and controlled Twitters to make me look good and shit. He's like doing stupid shit like the rest of us.
Yeah, no, I can see
the book changed my perspective. Like, I didn't really care about him. Either way, I didn't give much thought. I thought, oh, he's, just some rich dude and whatever. But, I mean, I recommend that book to anybody.
I'll read it. It's been there for a little bit. I've got like a bookshelf on I am a big reader, so I will get to it. But I got a bookshelf right next to my desk that I just fill up with shit constantly.
I hope somebody's still following him, and going to write
the next one.
Because when I got done with it the first time, I'm like, fuck.
I need more. Where's season 2?
I want weekly updates.
Yeah.
What the fuck did he do this week?
He is incredible though, like and a real builder.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that it was definitely a struggle because I started this thing from zero, right? Like literally $0, zero everything, and I had to do everything the whole way. But once you start to bring people on board, because you can't scale alone.
Yeah.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Yeah.
And as you bring people on, if you've done it all yourself, it's so much easier to maintain a standard. But then the battle, I don't know whether you can resonate with this, but the battle then becomes, do I lower my standards or do I force people to raise theirs? And that principal agent problem, there's a lot of tension in wanting people to raise their standards to yours and not allowing your standards to drop to theirs, because that takes so much energy and so much mental equity to manage.
Yeah. I struggled with that a lot. I resisted hiring people. I resisted giving up responsibility because, I liked the way I did it. I thought it was successful. And I'm sure my ego and my emotion and we're all caught up in it. I just didn't want to. I'm like, I'll just do it myself. That's difficult. That was really difficult for me.
What years would that been, you reckon?
It's got to be like in the, like I said, early 90s. Because I think I hired the first person in 92 maybe. Somewhere in there. I hired one person. I hired another. We had like 2 guys. And we had a little group. There was a really cool phase where there was like 5 of us. It's when we started shift. So whenever we started shift, there was like five of us, and great group of guys. Everybody was like, it's like a band where each guy was doing. We were all different, right? Everyone could play a different instrument. One guy was really good with hand drawing, and one guy was really good with wacky stuff. And I was like trying to keep it all like, in line. Those were fun times. Those were really fun times.
And then it scaled beyond that. And it stops becoming as fun and it starts becoming more corporate. Because at some point you guys became, I mean, I don't know what the turnover numbers would be like, but at some point it just becomes like a really big company.
Yeah. 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 Hundreds of millions, which, it's a big deal.
We need to bring you a quick word from our sponsor, motorsport.com. I got a YZ450F that I got some upgrades to do. You know exactly where I'm going. I'm going to need some help with customer service, so I'm going to chat with a gearhead. This box showed up. It has a 2007 KTM master cylinder, a Yamaha caliper, also 2007, and a Turner braided brake lines. I feel like this is a very good upgrade for $600. Need the old hanger, so we're gonna put a bit of grease on that and get it back on, bolt her up. Caliper has been done. Now this can just get bolted on. Now, shout out to Kiefer, who I think stole this off Doug Dubark. That was easy. Nah, that was easy. This is a pretty epic upgrade. You can get OEM parts to build this little Frankenstein brake kit, or basically anything else for any brand by going to motorsport.com. What is the progression of that figure? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's this moment where you're like, oh, we just turned over $1 million.
Yeah.
And then it's like 10 million. And like, how
20.
quickly did that scale up?
Yeah, the one I remember the most was 20. And I don't know if it was a real number or it was just something we came up with. We had heard at some point, because, Axo had become number 1, right? And so when I was little, I remember we were doing $4 or $5 million annually. That's like when I was a kid, the shocks and with the early stages of gear, it was like, I think $5 million. And we were pretty steady on that. And my dad was pretty happy with that. No risks and stuff. And then Greg and I got involved. And I remember at some point hearing this rumor, or, I don't know where we would have gotten that data. We heard that Axo was doing 20. They were number 1 and they were doing 20 million. And so we used that just as okay, that's the North Star.
Yeah.
Somehow
that's
we
the
got
pie in the sky.
Yeah, we ain't shit, and we're just fooling ourselves if we don't get to 20 million. Like, we think we're cool. Like, because that's always one of the things that bothered me. It's like, okay, you're okay, because there's some people find joy, and I'm cool, and I'm not going to be judged by anyone. I'm cool, whether it's a band or, we're not selling. Especially, I don't hear people talk about it anymore, but back then, sell out. That was a big fucking cultural thing. I don't hear anybody talk like that anymore now that I think of it. But it was like, sell out. And we're like, well, if you have that attitude, then are you really cool or you just think you're cool?
Yes. It was very skate. Like, that's still
very
in skate.
Yeah.
And it's like core.
Yeah.
Core. We got to be cool. And
don't do contests.
Yeah,
surf or skate. No contests.
You don't want to make money, bro. That's fucking lame. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm like, there's going to be a point in your life when when the money opportunity is over and you're going to go, what the fuck was wrong with me? So we heard this $20 million figure that Axo had achieved or something. We're like, whoa, that's huge. Okay, somehow we got to. That's the goal. That's the gauge of are we cool? Are we number one?
Yeah.
And that's all we care about is coolest number one company. So the goal was 20 million. And then I remember after that, we're like, okay, somehow the 20 million came from this idea that Axo was 20. The next one was 100 million. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it was from Surf or something. Because that became, after we were able to achieve like, okay, we're the number one motocross brand in the world. The next thing was surf, skate, action sports. Because for a while, I graduated high school. I moved to San Diego because my best buddy moved to San Diego. He went to college, and I didn't go to college, but I'm like my best friend and moved to San Diego, and I've been living at home. I'm going to move to San Diego, Dad. And so I was designing out of my apartment and stuff. And
so you were doing remote work before it was cool.
Yeah. And the best thing about that is that San Diego had that surf culture.
Yeah.
And like Massimo and Quicksilver and all these companies are starting, and it's all coming from Southern California. And I'd hang out with all my friends down there, and they're surfing, and I'm like, everybody's wearing Quicksilver or Massimo shorts and stuff. You go to a Supercross race, they're fucking wearing Quicksilver and Massimo, and nobody's wearing, whether it's Fox or anybody else. Nothing's cool. Everyone, what the fuck? You're going to a Supercross race and you're going to wear... I'd see people wearing t-shirt. Surf T-shirts, hoodies. It pissed me off. I'm all that we have to, as a culture, as an industry, we have to fix this. They need to be wearing moto brands. And so being down in San Diego, I started to like really try to understand like, how are they doing this? How are they taking this like sport and turning it into a lifestyle? Mm. And that was Terrafirma, and all of that was kind of the background of all of that is let's turn this moto into a lifestyle so that we're at the same table with Quicksilver and these guys like Moto and then, but miracle of all miracles, the X Games are created, right? And that created this like forum that all these young people are now aware of the X Games, and Moto is in there. And so we had an opportunity to like be one of those. I think without X Games, I don't know if it would have happened.
Really? It was that important culturally?
I mean, X Games was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. Like, it was, culturally, it was massive. I mean, that's why Travis is Travis, right? And that's why
Brian
some ways
is Brian.
Yeah. All of it. Those were cool times.
And it's just crazy, too, when you sit here and you kind of like chronologically go through it. Just how many of these separate timelines kind of line up to create what was created,
Yeah. So I forgot how we even ended up on that, but yeah, it was surf and skate and all of that we were talking about the kind of growth of the company.
So yeah, how quickly did you go from 20 to 100 then?
I don't know. I think that was faster than getting to 20.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, right?
Yeah.
So it's like so many graphs, and because what you're dealing with is compound interest.
Yeah.
And not necessarily compound interest in the sense that your money's in a bank, but there's this compounding of energy and time and resources, and you're just working on this company and this project for so long, and you're compounding those efforts. And so it's 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, 5 million, 20 million, 100 million. Like, that's how these things work when you are putting in effort over time that does see the results of compounding.
It hockey sticks.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and part of that is momentum and compounding and all those things. And the other part is that lifestyle component was huge. It was huge. We got a lot of shit for it internally from people, externally from people. You're selling it. I don't know if, this is about when we started selling to the malls, right? Selling to lifestyle. We'd sell to the same.
So this is when you're putting the clothing
lifestyle outside of moto dealers.
PacSun and all that shit.
Oh, exactly.
Zoomies.
Yeah. And the moto dealers hated us for it at first. And the moto fans hated us for it. And we're like, my philosophy, and our thought at the time was, if this is bringing us up to a level of appreciation and respect at a certain level. It's the kids at the Supercross wearing a Fox shirt or Honda or whatever it's going to be, you know, Oakley, instead of Quicksilver. Like, let's make that happen, right? Can't we all feel good about that?
Yeah.
And then the other thing was we were starting to get attention from outside, right? Moto was starting to get no fear, and non-moto brands are starting to like, hey, let's get the exposure of these top guys. And I thought, fuck, if we don't grow to that level, we're going to lose this.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, you know, Jeremy McGrath's going to be wearing like a Levi's fucking jersey, like a Wrangler. Like, we can't let this happen, because that was a real thing. People don't realize it. That was a real, I was thinking about that all the time. We're going to lose this. We're going to lose the top athlete guys. We're going to lose it somehow. You know, Nike fucking motocross boots and 1-800-COLLECT and Levi's or Wranglers and all this stuff. Like, I don't want to lose this. Like, I want moto. I want it to be all moto. Like, fuck, let's take moto all the way. That was important. So
Yeah, I've never really thought of it like that, or never
I thought, if
considered
we don't
that.
sell to the mall, if we don't sell to PacSun and stuff, we're not going to get to 100 million. You couldn't afford Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart and all this other stuff, like all the things we wanted to do. You can't afford it.
Yeah, so you had to like create it or get subsumed in a way.
Yeah, I thought we need to get bigger and we need to get stronger, because this whole thing's going to change. You know,
How was it like running the company at that point when you get to that $100 million number?
those weren't the funnest. That wasn't that fun.
Yeah, I bet.
This was the beginning of it not being fun.
I bet.
Yeah. Because there were a lot of different voices and a lot of different opinions
And pressure, man.
and pressure. But, you know, it's not all terrible. There was fucking a lot of fun and a lot of cool. Like, I got a lot of, as much as people talk shit about, you know, PacSun or whatever, I thrived in that. Because I was competitive. One of the things about me is I'm this like sneaky competitive guy, where I'm not trying to be a fastest racer or something, but
Yes.
look, I would, you know, when I was a kid and I'm designing, I'd be like, okay, that sold for 2,000. Like, fuck, that's good. Like, all right, I'm doing good. I'm trying to win at this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so when we were selling to PacSun or, you know, Zoomies and stuff, Quicksilver, Hurley, those guys are kicking our ass. Like, we're motocross. We're better than Surf. I want to be better than Surf. Because, you know, it's not only Fox. I feel like responsibility to Moto. Like, Moto should be number one. Why isn't Moto, like, we have 60,000 guys at Anaheim. Why aren't we selling more T-shirts than Hurley? That's like literally the conversations that me and my brother and the guys would have. Like, why isn't this happening? Let's do this. And for a while, we were kicking ass. We kicked ass.
What were the best years? What did the best years look like?
The thing that not too many people know, and this is, it's not like that anymore. There was a time when half of all of our sales was outside of motocross. It was selling lifestyle. It went from 10% of sales to 50% of sales, and the majority of the profit. We were selling the shit out of T-shirts and hoodies and everything else. And, you know, again, that whole attitude of, oh, that's not core, like, fuck that. Well, like, I'm proud of what we achieved and what we accomplished, and I think we enhanced and made motocross better because of it. You know, we were able to have the funds to do a lot of really cool stuff and make a better company and help the sport at the time.
Yeah, and I think that was probably going to be where I would take that next, right? Is like, so you're bringing in tens of millions of dollars from outside of the industry, essentially. What does that let you then do inside the industry? Like, I mean, I can imagine you guys were paying Ricky and James
$1 million each.
a year.
$1 million each a year. How do you do that? How do you do that as a $20 million company or a $50 million company? How do you do that?
You can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that. Like, we wanted to do that. We wanted to, like, have the coolest, the best. Like, I don't know. You can tell, like, I'm realizing just the words are coming out, like how much that judgment affected me at the time. It doesn't affect me anymore, like, or I'm over it or whatever. But the judgment of like, oh, you guys aren't being core enough, like, that was a real thing.
Yeah, and to be able, like, do you remember when you told Ricky that you were going to give him $1 million a year?
Well, I think it was Ricky asking for me.
Yeah. But like, that's crazy, dude. He grew up in a fucking trailer.
Yeah.
Literally, bro.
And James too.
And a company from inside the sport was able to cut them a check. What's $1 million a year work out to be a month? Like,
yeah, it was a lot of money. It's a lot of money to both those guys. And I feel like that, what we did, we were just trying to promote, Moto and Fox and all that. Like, I don't know. I shouldn't feel so guilty.
nah, I mean, yeah, I think that takes a company like that. And you're right. Like, when I grew up, it was definitely like Billabong and Quicksilver, and like that's what you wore as a kid, like, and I would have loved to have represented, because what it is like it's a representation of who you actually are. Like the clothing you wear is an external representation of who you are. Like you can signal to people at a time, when you're, I guess, trying to signal those things when you're a young kid, like finding out who you are. If you're a fan of this guy, like there is messaging in that, and there just wasn't an outlet for that at the time.
I know that some of the people would be like, oh, you should only be selling to moto dealers. I'm like, the kid that's buying our T-shirt at the mall, he's not going to go search out a moto dealer. It's just not going to happen. So, like, what should I now tell me the reason why we shouldn't be doing this? Where this is more money. It'd be like, don't do Supercross. Don't put it on TV. Just have it only for the core. Like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, and it's so weird to think back. Like, but definitely, people even internally at Fox. Oh, Pete's working on. You shouldn't be working on Pac Sun stuff so much. I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, that Ricky and James and all the stuff that we're doing a lot of good stuff, and it's because of that money. And we're making great stuff. Like, what the fuck?
But did it then create more more money, more problems kind of thing? Like it becomes just changes the dynamic in a sense.
It does, but the other thing, it changed the dynamic for the good internally. So a couple of things that happened. One is because we're starting to sell more like lifestyle clothing. We're getting big enough and, sophisticated enough. We were the first company, seems like a silly little thing, but it was so important. We brought the development of the gear in-house. So before all of this, I would fucking draw a little picture of, zebra pant in 2D, and I'd send it to Asia or whoever, wherever the factory was, Italy, and they would like interpret it and they would turn it into a 3D pant. And that process was so slow, and it was so removed from the athletes or the customer, right? And so because of this evolution of the company, I hired a lady named Janet Barber, worked for us for a long time. She works for me now at RENEN with me as your partner. And I talked her into coming into Fox. She worked at a LL Bean or some like apparel company. I forget which one. She came in and we created this department internally that was making patterns, fitting on athletes. And like, we're going to have this whole thing, all the control internally. And so we were the first motocross company in the world doing this. And it was a huge competitive advantage where, we could fit and change in the product like every single day. And then we would take the final pattern and send the pattern to Asia. It's just so silly to think that we weren't doing it this whole time. And it makes, if you hear this now and you're at Fox, you're like, oh, fuck, that seems so logical. Why didn't that? Of course that happened. But that was a big deal.
But it takes so long. Like companies and I guess just like projects in general, like there's a million things I could do better with this, but it's like it takes time and it takes resources
And money. It
and
takes a lot of money.
you're like, I'm doing the thing now. So like, when do I make it better? Like you get caught in this, you're trying to sustain the project and you're trying to improve the project. And both of those things are simultaneously, and cash is coming in and it's coming out. And like it is a very hard, long, arduous process to make anything better.
Right. And for a long time, you're on a treadmill. Like you're like whatever you're in this treadmill, like you just described, and you're like, I'm doing it. I'm just getting by. And then you put in that work, and at some point you get a break, right? And it's like, okay, like something worked, beyond my expectation, and now I got extra money, and now I can like put it back in. Because we weren't taking at that time, we weren't taking the money and like buying Lamborghinis and airplanes or stuff like that. It was like Ricky,
Just going back
Ricky
in.
and James and like, let's make more videos, and a lot of emotion caught up in this.
Yeah, I bet. And so when you get to that point, when does the sale of the thing start to enter the picture or like enter the chat? And like, how did that work? How does that work? Because from what I understand, you've been in and out a couple of times, or is that right?
I was out and in and out. Yeah, I guess a couple times.
Yeah.
So as the lifestyle part and, the other part, we started doing like shoes and stuff. And in the history of the company, the shoes isn't important. What's important is because of the shoes, I was able to hire people from Nike and Adidas that came and made the Instinct boot. I think is one of the best products that Fox has ever made. And that's because we were able to hire people from outside the industry that loved moto, but they worked at Nike and Adidas, and they came in and like, okay, we're going to have a whole footwear program. You guys can be part of building that. And that made the Instinct boot, and I think made boots better for the whole, industry. Because of all of that, we ended up moving the headquarters to Irvine.
Yep.
From Northern California. It was there forever. We moved it down here because it was getting harder and harder to hire people to Northern California. Because, when I was a kid, it was just Northern California. And then when I became a teenager, it's now Silicon Valley, super expensive, tech people everywhere. And to hire people to a motocross brand was like, it's too expensive.
Well, you've got to pay them a wage that they can afford to live in the place.
In Silicon Valley, yeah.
That's a struggle we have right now.
And you're losing people to tech companies, right? So, like, fuck, everybody else in moto and in action sports is in Southern California. And so I opened an office down the street from here, hired a few people and hired a few more people, and it was just becoming easier and easier, and this was becoming more of an animal. And so all the growth was happening down here. So we ended up like, at some point, this headquarters needs to move to here, right? And so the headquarters came here, and the warehouse went to Salinas for a while, and that was kind of maybe the beginning of the end or the beginning of the evolution, because I was down here. I kept coming down here, like I'd fly down here, and I was commuting by plane, Southwest, not a private jet. And my brother wasn't coming down as much, and the whole company had gotten maybe less fun. So those were the elements that were kind of the beginning of that. Like, and I was told, I'll never forget, I was told years before that it happened by this outside advisor that was a friend of our family. And one day he told me, he said, I've advised companies, I've seen family companies, what happens. And when enough members of the family stop working for the company, they start wondering, why is my money tied up in this company? And that day's probably going to come for you, and you got to think about it. And I remember thinking, that's never happening. That's never going to happen. We're always going to be like this. But that's not it. It's part of it. And if I could go back in time, I would, maybe I could have changed. We could have changed some things and changed the trajectory of the company and kept it in the family longer. But maybe it was just destiny,
That's what I was literally thinking. Like, how much of a company does it just become its own thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how much of a soul and a spirit does it develop? And does that thing take over independently of you and your family?
It's especially at a company, I think that size. I think you look at a lot of those companies, whether it's Apple or Nike or Fox or Oakley, that beginning, the people that built it and the families that they become, like that chapter in a company's growth that's where so much magic happens, and so much soul.
Yeah. But you're almost like giving birth to something, right?
Yeah.
And then that thing grows. And I mean, you'd probably see it with children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you give birth to this thing and it's yours and you have so much control and you have so much influence on its survival and the direction that it goes and the way that it grows. But then there's a point where like autonomy takes over. It becomes a self and it becomes its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if like companies almost have that.
They
where
do.
It just becomes its own identity. And no matter how much you want to control it, the wheels are in motion and it's going to be its own thing.
I think that's exactly what happens. And maybe it's possible to, I've thought about this a lot. Maybe it's possible to change the trajectory so it's flatter and you can control it more and it can be these people. But that's kind of life too, right? And so if you're not letting it follow this path and you're trying to limit it, are you also contributing to it dying at some point? Or am I going to let it go and let it grow? Or am I going to like try to control it and maybe I'm going to cause it to die? Because companies die. They die more than you realize, and they seem like successful and then it's over. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. Axo, yeah. There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
In a lot of different sports or industries and stuff. And so I always believe if you're not, I remember thinking a lot, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And we just have to keep going. But, that also leads to you questioning whether or not you let it grow the right way, right? Just probably with kids too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sure. And so you get to this point where it starts to get bigger, people have less involvement, but their capital is tied up in the percentage of the thing that they own, and then they don't have access to the capital because the company is like doing its own thing. And so that eventually leads people to want to sell because they can keep the company alive, it keeps doing its thing, but they get their money out of it, and they weren't necessarily working day to day in the company anyway.
Some of that's happening. Some of it is outside influence, right? You get to be big enough and people like realize, oh man, this company has potential to change ownership, or, I can come in and like be a big part of it. So you have that influence too, right? I'm sure that happens in all kinds of things. So it's a combination of those. And again, if you could go back in time, I've thought about this a lot. If we could go back in time and would have done things differently and flattened the growth and, paid dividends instead of like reinvesting all the time and taking less risk and trying not to grow it so much, would that have changed? I've talked to my my older brother about this, and he's made me feel good. He's like, you know what happened is the best way for it to have happened, like you're able to move on. Because part of it, again, is especially me, I was so emotionally caught up in the business, and so much of my like self-identity was in the business.
It's literally your name, dude.
I know. That can you ever really let it go? And what's the right answer? Are you like, there's different ways for life to go, and maybe there's multiple ways that are all good,
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, for one, it's your name. So it's like, it's always like you're so attached
Gabriel at Alpine Star is like me on steroids. Like, I mean, that guy is...
He still makes every decision.
Every decision. I've known him as, he's my brother's age. And we've known each other since we were little kids. And I think, okay, so in a different like trajectory, that's what that experience looks like. And he's happy as can be and committed and like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
There's different ways life can go.
Did the relationship always stay good between you and your brother?
Me and Greg?
Yeah.
No, like right around the sale, when we were all contemplating the sale, like I was pissed.
Yeah. So you didn't want it to sell.
I didn't want it to sell. I didn't want to sell. I didn't want it to stop. I didn't want the change and stuff. And so for a while, we weren't, it's crazy because we're so close today and we're close our whole lives. And for a while I wasn't talking to my dad. I wasn't talking to my brother. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was pissed. But now, we've gotten past it. And again, like there's part of me, like it's so weird about life, right? You can look at something if you're really open-minded, you can look at two experiences and they both, you can look at it good and bad and they're both so valid. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's, it makes it confusing.
Yeah.
So my brother's like, and he said that to me. He said, the way it happened is the best way because you couldn't have let it go and you could like, where would it have gone? And what would that have done to your life? And look at where your life, especially I'm a huge believer in if you're happy where you sit today in your life, then the path that got you there for all the good and the bad, you got to be grateful for because it got you to this place that you are today.
Yeah.
And you're still on this path. And the other thing is, when you think about like we all have our life is, when you think back about the story of your life, was it interesting, like dramatic? Those are the best. That's the best. Whenever I read somebody's life story and it's like, fuck, they went through all that shit. That sounds like a full life, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't go through anything like that. It's not that. I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic about my experience, but I was pissed but then I got over it, and my brother has helped me see, maybe this is the best thing, especially for me, because I was so caught up into it. And businesses are tough. It's not like I think about the Rolling Stones a lot. It's weird. It's like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a brand.
It's a brand, but like they can do it till the day they drop dead. Just keep playing the music, Yeah. I don't know what kind of crazy shit goes on behind the scenes. But on the surface, it's like, fuck, they just get to be the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
It's not like that for a business.
No.
Not at all.
No.
You have to grind it out.
Dude.
And it's tough.
And I mean, I'm guessing you guys made the kind of money where you didn't really have to do anything again, like fucking what a blessing.
What a blessing, right? What a blessing for people.
And I mean, okay, maybe that's too general. Maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. I guess I can't speak from experience, but I mean, again, there is a perspective where you can look at okay, I've got a friend that's just retired from a sport and he's made a fuckload of money and he's young, he's good looking, he's healthy, and he's the coolest fucking person in the world, right? And my kind of talking to him, I'm like, bro, you are blessed. Like, in the game of life, you played and you won. And now you're just got the cheat codes and you're just living life. So it's like there could be a crisis of meaning.
Purpose.
In that. So that's why I don't want to just blanketly say, like, what a gift, what a blessing. But I mean, for the other side, like, if I stop, like, there's a lot of people that are fucked, Mm-hmm. So like there is a place that a lot of people are in where it's like you just like even my parents, like there are a lot of people that's like they work almost to the day that they die, not by choice, but because they literally have to, mm-hmm. So like to be in the kind of position where you can do something and create something so great that society has rewarded you with enough money to like just not have to do like not have to fight to survive in that way. I mean, like that is one of the blessings that a person can get in life. But I think then that comes with the unique set of challenges post, like my friend, to where he's like, well, fuck, life's like, yeah, I'm good, but life is long. Like, what's the purpose? What's the meaning? And I think that if you can find that, then like you're killing it.
You have to find it, right? Because when our company sold, there was years of me being depressed. Years. I had more money than I'd ever had. Didn't have to work. Fucking depressed, man. Like my, whether it's ego or self-identity, my purpose, like fucking gone. And I felt, it's taken from me or whatever, but it's not true. I was, you have to take responsibility for everything that happens. And just back to Elon Musk, I mean, that guy doesn't need to be fucking working. Doesn't need to be sleeping on any couches like he does. And that's the way to live. That's why I love that guy, and I love that his story is like, fuck it, it's not about the money. It's about his purpose of being here. He can maintain that purpose because his purpose is way better than mine. Like, his purpose is the best. Right? My purpose was make moto as cool as you can possibly make it, make a brand that people love and like want to tattoo on their bodies or whatever because they think it's so cool. What you've done is cool, and adds to their life. Elon's trying to make the world better, like with
humanity
stuff, fucking stuff that's here.
Let's make sure humanity exists outside.
He'll
of
never
this planet.
achieve it. He'll die with all those goals still being the goals, right?
Yeah.
Because part of it, like, what sucks is ever actually, for me, I think, is achieving your goal sucks. I like the journey. I don't like to arrive. I want to like keep that journey going, or keep the dream alive. That's like you keep reaching until the day you die. Because it's, I did, I don't think he even told my brother. He probably would assume it. But yeah, I was definitely, after the company sold and stuff, I was fucking depressed. I was not happy.
How long did it last?
My sad period? Years. I got a divorce, and I'm like, fuck, what's my purpose? I had a couple kids, and they were my purpose. I'm like, so this is it? Like, it's kind of a weird get-off point for me of like having a real purpose. My kids are getting older, and they're not going to need me at some point. Now what the fuck? But then, you pull yourself out of it and just start, like something that Fro told me a long time ago that I think Keith McCartney told him, is just think about it like one step at a time, like stacking chips. It was like, I think his thing was stack pennies. Just to like take a step, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Pull yourself out of it, And that, thank God, like that's one of the reasons why I do RENEN now, is because I've got my purpose again. And, I don't know if you know how much you know about my story, like after Fox and stuff. So I stayed, after the company got sold, I stayed for like a year.
Yeah. What year did it get sold?
2000 and second time was 2018.
So who bought it the first time?
So the first time,
how does it work?
Yeah. So the first time was private equity group.
Yeah.
So you decide you're going to sell, and then you're either going to sell to like a Nike or somebody. It's called a strategic partner, or you sell to a financial who's, private equity group or somebody who's going to bring these professionals in and like fix whatever problems you have and like make it a better company.
Which literally never works.
Well, they can fix all those things, the plumbing of it, but the soul goes.
Yeah.
So that happened. And I stayed for a little less than a year. So that was the first time. Was my family sold essentially all of their shares. I sold a little tiny bit, but I roll. It's called roll. I rolled my shares and I stayed in because I didn't want the dream to die, and I wanted to keep going, and thought this will be cool. I stayed for like a year, and then I realized, wow, that, you know, my family and all that, that's why I liked it. Like, I can't do, it's not different. I can't do this. It's not the same to me.
This podcast is brought to you by our new electrolyte partner, SOTA Fuel. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you would know that I'm pretty big on the whole hydration thing. Every single day, I make sure I drink water mixed with SOTA Fuel electrolyte mix. SOTA Fuel is packed with all 6 essential electrolytes and key vitamins to help keep you hydrated and performing at your best. With up to 5 times more effective hydration than water alone, you'll stay energized and focused throughout your ride. Plus, there's no added sugar, so you won't experience those dreaded spikes or sugar crashes. As far as a supplement for riding dirt bikes, SOTA Fuel is your friend on and off the track. It helps reduce arm pump, muscle fatigues, keeps you hydrated to avoid headaches, and provides sustained energy to keep you sharp. SOTA Fuel is not only effective, but it's also one of the cleanest and most complete formulas on the market, with 2 to 3 times the electrolytes compared to industry standard, and a cost per gram that is twice as affordable. Lightweight, portable sachets are perfect. Throw in your gear bag, throw in your toiletries bag, throw in your work bag. They've got 4 great flavors, but my personal favorite is this bad boy right here. Gypsy Juice. This is our very own flavor. I think it is by far the best flavor out of the 4. Go to sotafuel.com right now or click the link in the description. I would love for you guys to try it. I'm just trying to think where we could jump back on here. Like, so you spent a couple of years, I guess, like kind of struggling with that identity, which it makes complete sense. Like, I mean, I don't know how you feel saying that, but like, at least for me sitting here, I mean, I've thought about it even in this. Like, I've been doing this for a long time now, and I love doing this. And it's like, I have thoughts all the time. I'm like, at some point, do people just stop listening to this? And I mean, not even this particular podcast, but just, is this a bubble? Does this go away? Like, this is a multi-billion dollar, like this is this multi-billion dollar industry of just like, people are just listening to me and you having a conversation, and hundreds of thousands of people will listen to it. And it's just like, does it stop? And like, how much of myself have I put in this that then makes it weird once it does stop? And what do I do? And do I make the kind of money from it where I can just be okay? Like, if this stopped right now, I'm not in a position where, like, I would have to find something, you know, like, it is a weird thing to go through when you've put so much of yourself into a thing. And I guess maybe it's just as weird not having enough money to chill as it is to have enough money to chill. Like, maybe it's just two sides of the same coin, and it's fucked both ways, you know?
Well, taking the money part out of it, because that's kind of a whole different topic, is the emotion and like your life purpose, and back to
like how much have you put into this? Like, what part of you dies when it dies?
Yes. And one of the things my dad always said, and it's true, I don't know if it's a physicist, but he said the only constant is change.
Yes.
And so that was one of the things, the fucking paranoia. A big part of Fox and that got us to where what we achieved and pushed us every day was this paranoia that it's all going to like fall apart. And there were times when we thought, fuck, is motocross going to be gone? Is motocross done?
So you're feeling that same thing.
Fuck, we would be feeling that all the time. And so thinking, okay, something's going to change. And so my advice to you is like, just have that paranoia all the time. And what's good about it is it drives you today, but it also keeps your mind open to like, hey, maybe this is going to be different in the future. And so I should be aware of things as they're starting to happen, because you don't want to be one of those guys that rides the ship all the way to the bottom, right? Like, what if it transitions to something else? And if you're watching it and seeing it, then you'll grow and your life will follow the path of where the earth is going, you know, where the society is going or whatever. Because some people are like, no, this is it. I'm gonna stick with this.
And that might have been you, like when you were talking before. One of the things that was going in my head, I was like, he probably would have gone down with the ship.
Yeah. For sure I would have. For sure I would have. No, that's very insightful. And that's when I think about like what my brother said, and I think about not being so depressed. It's like, yeah, maybe it was the best. Maybe I'm lucky and blessed that that somebody else took control of that. It was out of my control, or I didn't do those things. Like, again, I'm happy today. I'm happy as I've ever been. Happiest time of my life is right now. So thank God for all of it, you know?
Yeah. And so when did RENEN come into the picture for you?
Yeah. So after the time running Yeezy, I learned tons of stuff during that time period, like about direct to consumer and like marketing and like the new modern, like fucking, I wasn't even on Instagram before that, you know? And so just like learning all of that. And so when I left, I thought, fuck, I was like reborn almost. It was like, oh, I got all these ideas. But on the other hand, I was super depressed about Fox, right? Like, like all my identity. I didn't like to watch the races. I didn't like to watch people wearing Fox t-shirts and stuff. It was like, oh, it's like an ex-girlfriend, you know? It's just like, fucking. But then after a while, I thought, you know what? I've gotten that new idea. You know, what I did with RENEN is enough time passed also with my non-compete, so I could do whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to build a factory. Well, here's my idea. I'm going to build a factory, and I'm going to sell direct to consumer, and I'm going to make whatever the fuck I want. I'm going to make cool stuff, and I'm going to connect with customers again and just go back to all the things that I loved about Fox.
Initially.
Yeah. Right? When it was simple. And so this one day I called up Janet, the one I told you about earlier. She worked at Fox for 25 years. She was making patterns and in charge of development. She worked with James and Ricky and all those guys. Like, she was right there, huge part of like the fit and the development of our products. And I called her up one day. I knew she wasn't at Fox anymore. And I called her one day and I said, hey, where are you and what are you doing? Because here's my idea. And she said, well, I'm in Indiana and I'm working for a company that makes something similar to a motocross jersey. I'm like, well, and that happens to me a lot in life, is like, I don't know, like my wife will tell you, like, just I'm somehow manifesting things as I go along. And I don't know if you believe in that kind of stuff, meditation and manifesting. Yeah. I totally believe in it. I've kind of done it my whole life. And so by the end of that phone call, I'm like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to build a factory, and you're going to come work there. You'll be my partner, and we'll do cool stuff again. So that's where RENEN came from.
I'll share a little bit about manifesting real quick. So if you're into it.
I'm totally into it.
It's literally one of the reasons I married my wife. We met in Bali, and we had this conversation. And
is she listening?
No. We had this conversation, and we were just talking about our life. Like, so she grew up in Russia, like so different, right? And I was never in the place in my life I wanted to be when I was a kid. We had a pretty tough upbringing and not a lot of money and like that sort of thing. And like my whole life was spent inside my head manifesting like this better life that I wanted to build, and I would see the things that I wanted to do, and there wasn't many people that I kind of met along the way that would they were so like, this is why my life is like this. Maybe people never spoke about it. It just wasn't like a thing. And then we were at dinner one night and we were talking about our life, and she's like, oh, the whole thing, like my whole life is just like, you have the universe that you live in your head, but it's different to reality. And your whole job in life is to just to bring that from inside to outside, you know? And it's like, there's this manifestation process. And when you listen to her life story, it's fucking insane, dude. Like what she did to take herself from where she was to, where she was born and the cards she was dealt to get here now. And it was just like this. It wasn't even like a belief in manifestation, it was like, no, this is how this is all the things that I did. So it's not even like I think this is real. It's like, this is how I lived my life. And I was very much the same, like just there was a million examples of, every single thing that I did was like what I dreamed of doing. But it's not a dream. It's like you have it in your head and you can see the future in a sense. It's not real to anyone else but you. Doesn't exist anywhere else but in your head. And but you're almost like signing yourself up for a fair bit of pain because like it's quite hard to manipulate the physical universe in that sense, but it's like that's what it is like it's this internal thing, and like you just have to kind of grind it out in the real world to like mold reality into what you saw.
My big thing on that is you don't tell people. You keep it internal. You just said like internally, and my thing is you don't tell people if whatever you're trying to manifest for yourself or your life is you keep it yourself. You keep it internal because I think that's where the power is. Is that you're like you've got it here. I know for myself when I don't like the feeling of it. I'll be like, oh, here's my dream, and then I tell people, and it feels like, oh, just fucking let the air out of my balloon. Like now it's not here burning anymore. It's fucking gone. And so I don't think you should tell people. You think you should manifest it. Maybe your wife or something. Even my wife, I don't like.
No, it took me a while to learn that actually. I used to, when I was younger, it caused a lot of problems actually because like I would tell people the things that I did a lot of those things, but it caused a lot of weirdness along the way, and a lot of people would like, people definitely like look at you differently. But then these days, I think when I started the podcast, like it I don't know whether it was like a conscious decision to keep things internal or if I was literally just too busy trying to make shit happen to even do it. But I definitely learned along the way that it's better to just surprise people. And people, it's a weird thing. Like, I wonder what all of this looks like from the outside, because it's so fucking hard to make it happen. You know what I mean? And it's like, there feels like a very big disconnect. But, oh, you're doing so good. And I'm like, fuck, bro, this is a grind, dude. Like, this is a struggle. But I think it's because, so much of it is internal. But it took me a long time to realize that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just like you hold on to it because it's more,
it's energetic.
It builds you strength. Yeah. It builds strength and energy inside you. Yeah.
That's cool. It's real. It's definitely real.
Yeah. And meditation's real. Like, there's so many things that...
what does meditation look like for you in your life?
So I didn't like, what did you call it? Like technically, like, the meditation where you like go into the zone. I've done that. I've started doing that recently, and it's great, and I love it, and it like definitely feels.
Do you do
like
anything guided or?
I do guided.
What do you use?
A lot of it guided. Like some of the, my wife gives me some. She meditates she meditates every day, and I don't meditate every day, but I'll do some guided ones and stuff. And I think I would advise anybody listening to meditate. Most people, you say, oh, you should meditate. If you're not meditating, you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, it's a very loaded term too.
Whatever. Fuck. To get somebody to meditate, you have to. You almost have to want to meditate. I can't remember how. It was my wife somehow talked me into it the first time, like to do a meditation. And then I realized, my whole life I've done something that's like a meditation. It's that time to myself, and I would just sit and I would like just let my imagination go, and I would like dream of stuff, and I would just like, it's all in your head, right? To me now, so that's my childhood meditation. It was very imaginative, a lot of imagination. To me now, what meditation means, at least to me now, is almost mental exercise, like brain exercise, and that you realize that you have more control over your thoughts, and that it takes exercise. You have to like work at it. You instead of waking up every day and just your mind is like, I look over there and over there, and then bing, bright light, and over there, and you're not controlling that. It's stepping back, and so my favorite meditations at the beginning were, it's so cool. I don't know if you've done this one. It'd be, the guide or whatever would tell you, focus on your breathing, right? That's standard stuff. And now like have all of your awareness on your breath. And now use your ears and listen. Do you hear any sound? And I remember like I was in my living room and I could hear like, I think it was a bird outside or something. No, let your full concentration go to the sound, whatever sound you hear, let your concentration go there. Now bring it back. Bring your thoughts away from what you were just doing. They're doing a better job than I am, but bring your thoughts back to your breathing and like shut that off. And that exercise of like go there and go like control where your mind is and your focus and your concentration. People don't do that enough and they don't have that control. And that's why kids with ADHD or whatever the hell, it's just like their minds are just running loose. And you need that discipline. And I think that the meditation is super powerful with that. And it helps you with controlling your emotions and focusing and like just it makes you a better person, you know?
I completely agree. Your one thing that like anxiety, right? Like people would talk about anxiety. It's like one of the more common words in fucking the 20th century, I would say, you know. But so much of your anxiety is tied to all of your anxiety is essentially tied to your thoughts and your breathing, you know, like, and one of the biggest things for me, like, so I was doing a week shoot at Star Racing the last week. And I just like, I looked at my Garmin and I was like, fuck, I'm stressed. Like you can see the stress meter go up, you know, and I could feel it. And if you stop for a second and you take stock of your physicality, like your breathing's fast and it's shallow. So they have like a locker room where all the riders get changed and all the riders had gone with basically just kind of doing some filming. And I was just like, fuck, I'm just going to go sit down for 10 minutes. And I literally just sat down and just, straight tied to the breath, and I went from like 99 stress on my watch down to like 23 in like a matter of minutes by just focusing on the breath, and all of the attention is on the breath, and it like just completely changed my experience, you know. And there's a utility in that, and that becomes like a fucking hack. Yeah. But I think that there's also like a much deeper level, you know, where you can kind of get to with it. So there's, you know, stage one would be identifying like that monkey mind and how it affects your day, your thoughts, your, you know, the stress on your body physically. So there's that element. And if it's a tool in the toolbox to kind of like recenter you, refocus you, bring you back to more you and less of the noise. But I also think that there's a way to get to know yourself, to look at your thoughts, to look at your past, like even how much free will you even have or, you know, perceive to have. And then there's a way that you can just go living your life. Like you can live your life almost with a different operating system with enough time and understanding of like what's really going on, you know. Mm-hmm.
Like a reset, like a brain reset, right? Like, and it's the control. It's, to me, it's so much as the controlling your thoughts. You know, you see people with anxiety and they can't stop. They can't stop thinking whatever the thoughts are. I wish that if I could go back in time, especially during that really tough, stressful period at Fox,
where you were just on autopilot.
And I was no fun to be around, and I was shitty. I was a shitty friend. I was a shitty spouse. I was a shitty all the things, right? And if I could have, I don't know that I could have. If I could have like put meditation in a part of my life, maybe that would have like changed things. I'm just grateful that I have it now. You know, that awareness, the awareness of your thoughts. Most people don't even fathom it. No. It's like, I am my thoughts.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, well, the quality of your life is directly tied to the quality of your mind.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what your brother was saying about the perspective of the sale. There's two perspectives that you can take. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, or this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Both things are true.
Yeah.
You know, there's an analogy. I'll share with you an app. I use the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. I don't know if you've ever heard of Sam Harris. Fucking brilliant guy. But he uses this analogy in the introduction course to the meditation app, right? And imagine you have twin brothers, biologically identical, right? And you ask them both to do deadlifts. So one of them does deadlifts, and you have the physical pain, like you are in pain when you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But his thoughts are, fuck, this is awesome. This is killing me, but my muscles are going to repair and I'm going to be stronger. And if I do this over weeks and months and years, and then I'm going to be a beast.
Yeah.
And then twin B is like, fuck this. This is so shit. I'm going to be so sore. I won't be able to walk tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to get up after I have a shit. I'm never doing this again. It's the same pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally biologically the exact same feeling of pain. But it's the story that makes that pain meaningful in any kind of way. And that's every single aspect of your life is the exact same.
Yeah.
You know, so the sale of the company, like you and your brother can both look at it in these two completely different ways. Both things are true. Like both of these brothers doing the deadlifts, their experience of the pain is correct. But it's like which one affects the quality of your life in a positive or negative way. And it's like, it's what you're saying, like you are your thoughts, and the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your mind.
I didn't think we were going to go down this path. No, it's good. And more people, it'd be good for, like, you know, it's hard for people to accept, especially, you know, meditation. You talk to the average person, that's not into it. Oh, meditation's voodoo and all that stuff. But that's why I try to say it's really just exercising your brain, you know, your mind and your thoughts, you know, and you really need to get control over them as best as you can.
Yeah, yeah. So how has the journey of RENEN been over the last few years?
Difficult, good, great and difficult. Part of the difficult part is that I miss working with my dad and my brothers and the people. It reminds me a little bit. It's lonelier and stuff. But my favorite thing at Fox was always, and my uncle said the same thing about his engineering. It was his favorite thing was being alone in engineering. And my favorite thing was always be alone in design. Like I can start designing at 9:30 at night and design up until the point that I can barely like keep myself awake. And it's not work. It's not hard. I love it. It's just, you know, something about my brain, right? Like,
it's an outlet.
It's an outlet. It's the what my brain wants to do. It's almost my meditation. Like I look forward to it. Like, oh, good. I get to design. Like, right. I'm not doing accounting.
Yeah.
Maybe some people love that. I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine. But for me, it's like I'll design for hours, and then the next day I'm like, fuck, what did I work on last night?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I have to open it up. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
It puts me in this weird trance sometimes. I love it. So that's the personal part. The other part is that I feel like we're making great product, and I think we're connecting all those Fox things. I think we're connecting with customers. You know, we're building it in the U.S., which I feel great about, you know, and I wish that's one of the regrets. I wish that at Fox, I wish we had been able to do some of that. I never even thought of it, but I wish that we had done some more of that. There's a lot of value there, especially these days. So, yeah. So it's been that part's been great. It's making really good product that I'm happy about, and working with Janet again and the people that we have. It feels good again. It feels like I'm back to, you know, it's like I'm a musician that's playing the guitar again.
And
like
are you able to, I guess, enjoy the process without any of the expectations now?
Yeah.
Like, are you genuinely able to feel that?
Yeah.
Because that would be great.
This is like a dream, right? I get to, this morning I'm like, oh, I got another idea. I'm going to design it and we'll make a sample. See how I feel about it after the sample. Nobody told me to. I didn't have to get up and do that. Like, oh, I'll work on some things. Oh, that doesn't feel good enough. I'm going to put that I save it. Sometimes I'll look at it again. Oh, I can make that better. Or that idea was terrible. I'm not going to do anything with it. So it's just a complete creative freedom, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, that would have to feel good.
It feels so good. I'm so grateful that all the things that got me to this point. And that's kind of all I want to do with it, is like make it cool and fun and creative and, hopefully connect with where people are like, fuck, I can't wait to see the next thing.
Yeah. Do you have any, I guess, like goals or expectations, or are you really just taking it exactly how it comes?
The goal and the expectation is to get it to be like, it's again, like, I think it was my dad used to say, if you're not growing and it's not like resonating with people, then you're fucking fooling yourself. You're like one of those guys that's, playing guitar at home and nobody else likes your music except for you, or you're a painter and you think your art is great. Everyone else thinks it's shit. Like,
Yeah.
so is it shit or is it really good? Or do you care, or do you just happy with the painting? Right. So it depends. For me, part of my joy is in feeling like I did something good. And then the other part is like, I want people to like it. I'm not doing this just for myself. I'm not throwing it in the garbage every day. So, it's like, and I feel like it's getting better. It's like a small crew, and I feel great about like what we're doing, like building product. So we make all the pants and all the jerseys. I don't know if you know, we build from scratch every pant and every jersey that we sell. We build in Indiana at our factory.
Wow.
White fabric, basically white blank fabric comes in the front, and the finished product comes out the back and goes straight to you.
So what's the turnaround time from like customer to?
So we will make a custom, like you want a custom jersey or whatever. We'll have it to you. You order it today, we'll have it to you in less than 2 weeks.
Wow.
Your name, your number, like. So you go on the website and you can pick like, oh, I like this jersey and I want it vented, or I don't want it vented. I want my name in the back. Like you can choose those. You like the pant that goes with it graphically, and you want it to be, the pants you can pick like a durable version, a full stretch like pro version, or a vented version.
Yeah.
Pick any of those, pick your jersey, and you'll get both of them in 2 weeks.
That's crazy, eh? All American made, straight from scratch.
And we know what we're doing.
Yeah. We've been doing it for a while.
We've been doing it for a while.
I feel like, is it Janet?
Janet, yeah.
I feel like I met her in like 2015. We like filmed some stuff and she was like on the sewing machine.
Probably. She was huge part of like Fox during all the growth and everything, yeah.
Yeah,
she knows motocross apparel as good
as anybody.
She's the expert, probably.
Can you look up, what's the website?
RENEN? RENEN, RENEN, USA.com.
N?
Yeah, now one more N.
USA.com. I want to see. I remember seeing a bunch of stuff a while ago on mountain bike stuff too.
Yeah.
So go to MX. I just want to see a couple designs.
Yeah, go to like Moto Kits. Click on the top thing that says Moto Kits. Second one over. That one. Yeah. Click anywhere there. Scroll down a bit.
Oh, so this is the kits.
Yeah, this is, you can shop it. This helps you shop in kits. Moto guys like to shop kits, or you can mix and match. One of the things I try to do is make it so you can mix and match a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so clean.
That's one of my things. It's pretty clean. It's pretty, I feel like it's got a lot of what I did at Fox.
That gives me 07, 08,
that one,
James, the ink ink kit.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I do like it.
That's literally like paint that was on the floor. I was doing a painting of some zebra stuff, and then I was kind of being sloppy, and it was the paint that was on the canvas on the floor, and I took a picture of it and I made it.
No way.
Made a kit, yeah. So we got some new version of zebra and camo, and you can see some of it. You can pick what color you have. This old photos and stuff. But.
Yeah. Are you gonna how how hard are you going to try and go with like getting big athletes and all that sort of stuff? Is that just not where your head's at these days?
That's not where my head's at. We did some stuff with, especially like Seawer, made gear for him for a year. It was awesome. But that's definitely not it. Not the goal. It's not the not goal. It's not, I'm trying to avoid it, but that's not the goal.
Yeah.
We do stuff with Axel Hodges.
Yeah.
We do all his.
That's been awesome.
Yeah, and we do all his gear, and he's a great guy and a great friend and super fun. But it reminds me of like that. Remember the Doug Henry era where it's more about like let's just focus on the product and customers and making great stuff for them. And once you're caught up in like the racing and it's like, oh, Monday, what did they say and what did they do? And like. So it's just it's a different experience, and I think it makes the product a little bit different. And
it makes the economy of it all a little different too.
Yeah, for sure.
Imagine what Gabrielle is spending on athletes right now,
right?
And imagine what that does. You wouldn't know a Fox. Like you're spending literally millions and millions of dollars to cover that nut.
Yeah,
like that just creates a whole thing, and it's like I get it. And you obviously, I mean, Alps and Fox is, I wonder what the market share would be, but I feel like Alps is probably the biggest brand in the business right now.
On a global basis, I would think.
But that comes at a huge cost and at a huge overhead, and it just changes the dynamic. And it sounds like, I mean, you've literally been there and you've done that. And this feels just more artistic. And
this is what I want to do now. Is like get back to the things that I love. Is make really great product, good designs, and then the Made in USA. I think is I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for that. I want to make it in the US. I want to control it. I want to make really really good product. And have it so connected to customers. That's not a heat transfer. That's
sublimated.
It's like a factory.
Yeah.
It's the same level that, Ken Roxon or Tomac or any of those guys should be getting. Sometimes they don't, but they should be getting. And so we're delivering that to the customer.
Yeah. Which I think that is super cool. Like I've had a couple of those and it does feel pretty good.
It's way better.
Yeah.
It's way, way better.
Especially for there is like a functionality there too. Like any time you have to have like big logos stuck and like it does change the functionality.
So now it breathes. It's not affecting the performance of the fabric and
lasts longer. It washes better.
All the things. Yeah, it's great.
Dude, this has been awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I got more of an emotional journey than I expected.
Yeah. I've been wanting to do this with you for a long time too.
Thanks.
So I'm glad. Yeah, I didn't know how it would go. Like I said,
I didn't know how it would go either.
Yeah, I knew it would be great because I followed you on Instagram for a very long time, and I was around. Like we'd never even met before today.
Yeah.
But I was like around, and I did a bunch of work for Fox back in the day, and so it was. I knew this would be as good as what it was. I hope you enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. But before coming here, I was like, I wonder if I can get like emotionally into the place where it would be good and it won't just be like blowing it off, like standard answer, like, okay, move on. But I definitely got like deeper than I thought I would.
Is there
which
anything?
Is cool. It's a compliment to you,
I appreciate it. Is there anything you think we missed? Any ground that would be important to maybe cover?
Yeah, tons of it. I haven't thought of it yet, but yeah, I'm sure there's tons. There's so much cool, so many cool things that happen at Fox. And
what would be some of the memories you go back to? That's just like this sums up how amazing this experience was.
Well, we were at the building of the what's it called? The U.S. Open of Supercross, right? We were me and Greg and the promoters, like with all of that, and then the early days of Loretta Lynn's, like Davies family, the Coombs family built it, but then I think that we came in at a kind of an early time. We did the Radio Fox thing. I don't know if you know about that, and we did the tower, and so. When I think about all those, like I feel like the thing that I'm really proud of is that we were adding We added value. We added energy to all these things,
You
right?
added to the
We weren't
culture.
reaping.
Yes.
We weren't just reaping stuff. It was like, hey, let's make this better. Like, let's do stuff. Radio Fox and Loretta Lynn's. Nobody got made money off of that. We were like, fuck, let's make this. I loved the early Radio Fox. Like one of the best moments of my life, I'll never forget, is Radio Fox. We had just finished third night of it or something, and it was over, and I was super happy with like whatever we talked about and the people we had called on. And I was walking back, and like Bob Marley was playing like over the loudspeaker. I was all by myself. I'm like, fuck, I'm happy. Fuck, that's it. That's the life moments, you know? So,
and it was like just that feeling of accomplishing. Like, so you'd manifested Radio Fox.
And peace.
And it worked.
Yeah, and it worked. And it was fun. And there was no expectation. Like, hey, fuck, I wonder if we can do this. I remember Davey's like, at night, people are sitting around and like looking for some entertainment. I think Radio Fox was his idea. Like, hey, let's do something. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do it. We'll call people and we'll just a bunch of kids like come up with stuff. But again, the intention was always, let's make something that's good for people, that people will enjoy. It wasn't like, hey, let's do stuff for ourselves, you know? U.S. Open, let's make something that's cool and that'll inspire the sport to maybe go to another level on, what the show could be like or what they're going to pay the athletes, and lots of that, right? And that's when really great things happen. I think when you do it, you're not doing it for yourself. You're like, let's make something great for people.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you didn't start this like, I'm going to do this because my ego says I want to talk to people. It's like, oh, fuck, let's do something that's cool.
Yeah, you definitely hope. I'll give you a best example of what this is. We just did the pod with Garth Milan. You would have worked with Garth at some point. You didn't?
I don't know.
You know who Garth is, though,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So I do the pod with him. He's not a big name, right? You compare Garth to Eli Tomac. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's the different thing. It's going to get a different, it's commercially not the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But to see the comments on his video when that came out, that was it. Because I'm like, I know him. He's the fucking man. That dude needs to be out into the world.
Yeah.
People that have looked at his photos forever, for the last 20 plus years, need to know how fucking good that dude is. And to see the outpouring of support, that was one of the more rewarding things. So I think that's like a very good example of what this is. Or, you get Eli, no one's ever heard that dude talk for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And it's like, to give people that experience, that feels like the special part of this for me. And, it's one of those, you'd probably feel the same way when you'd get back from that. Like, you guys made a lot of money out of Fox, but it's like, shouldn't you? Like, if you're giving and you're creating value, like, society kind of does reward that. Like, over time, we've built society to reward people for adding value. And so I think that the people that are the most successful in life are the people that try to add the most value.
Yeah.
And I just think you get back as a byproduct of providing a certain level of value for people.
The creators and the builders, right? Yeah. Oh, when you said, what else could we talk about next time? Would be the old stuff, like the old James Stewart when he was a kid, and like, fuck, there's so many cool stories.
That photo of James, Ricky, and Travis.
Yeah. Well, the video, right?
Yeah, when you look at that, that speaks so much to what you guys did.
And the magic of that, 3 kids, and they're like, those are the kids that we talked to that night. Cool, man.
Literally magic.
Yeah.
To go on and do what they did for the sport, and to be the medium that went through,
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff, man.
All right, part 2 incoming. We'll do it at some point. This was really good.
It was super
thoroughly enjoyed it. I
too.
appreciate it.
Yeah. I enjoyed it whether or not it got recorded or not.
No, awesome, mate. Well, yeah, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you some point soon.
All right. Thank you.
Pete Fox, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.